I'm a motherfucking chainsaw. See everything, it remain raw. Why you think we brought Q unique and slain for? The same reason that Henry VIII was king for. The same reason Kaczynski was in the Bing for. The thoughts going through Tyson mind in his ring walk. If it's beef, I suggest to you that you bring chalk. Everything is more merciless than a Ming thought. You in county and thought that you speaking Bing talk.
I feel how I feel cause I was born to kill. Ain't no lover seen the rebel gun stole my soul. I feel how I feel cause I was born to kill. Put the metal in your mouth like you was rocking braces.
After the game ends, I'm blasting from Gravesend. You rapping for game men, I'm a master of mayhem. The city's a pool of devils and sin. I give you the tools that'll sever your skin. Like the hands of a track assassin, choking the victim, keeping the gap from blasting. I'm hoping and wishing the streets let me stack from rapping. I'm speaking the crack, holding a magnum cannon. You slamming.
I feel how I feel cause I was born to kill. Ain't no lover seen the rebel gun stole my soul. Cause I was born to kill. Metal in your mouth like you was rocking.
I'm ghetto like strawberry in a limo, copping rocks in Queensbridge. Real shit, keep your weapons concealed, kid. This is for soldiers that chose to ride. Those that died, logo made of skulls and knives. Murderers multiply, souls survive. Those that know the road survive. Scope the sky, vultures fly. Desert eagle, chrome collide. Close your eyes, it's the hellion. My rebellion, retaliate. I have the whole New York state aiming at your face.
I feel how I feel cause I was born to kill. Ain't no lover seen the rebel gun stole my soul. I feel how I feel cause I was born to kill.
I was on a crash course with the cemetery or the task force. Shooting for the skies, I'd do anything to blast off. Rewind to 99, fucking now fast forward. If I could see today, this is everything I asked for. Back then I had nothing, I could rap my ass off. I'm on the corner spitting raps, twisting caps off. Now here I am today, people. See, this is what you asked for. Not the man, not the myth, I'm the superhero with this mask off.
Everybody's where they dealing and selling vinyl. Acting like you Richie but you Lionel. Sound primal, so you study mine like a final and still fail. Lost the battle, now you leave a blood trail. Like a snail, you just a shell. Just as well, you can't come where I dwell. I rebel. Battling forever and a day, never went away. I bring it to you on a tray. With a glass of ice, I'll make you call me master twice. I'm too nice, kid, I'm just too nice. Don't you get it? I wouldn't have said it the first time. I don't curse rhyme, I curse swine. Like a fool you when you blind. Why you still looking for a sign? original rap. Everybody stealing, catching feelings. Everybody sweating, dealing, and selling vinyl. Acting like you Richie, but you Lionel. Style primal, so you study mine like a final and still fail. Lost the battle, now you leave a blood trail. Like a snail, you just a shell, just as well. You can't come with my well. I'm a bell, never end the day, never went away. I bring it to you on a tray. With a glass of ice, I make you call me master twice. I'm too nice, kid, I'm just too nice. Don't you get it? I wouldn't have said it the first time. I don't curse rhyme, I curse swine. The original, I know who you when you blind. Why you still looking for a sign?
Yeah, welcome. Blessings to all the people that are here. Looks like our last video didn't make too many people happy. They got feelings hurt. So it looks like we'll be banned on the main channel for a couple weeks. People can't stand the heat. They can't stand the mouth of madness. You know how it is. We anticipated such events. But yeah. I'm doing a little show on the alt-right. I mean, not the alt-right, the woke right. Same thing, isn't it? So let's check this out. Where we were at in this Jordan Peterson interview. Yesterday, we did a show called Made by Machine Bob, and it ruffled some feathers. I think people were wildly upset. And we also find out several factions colluding together, all in order to block our content. Why would they be so afraid of what we're saying? Maybe because it's true. Maybe because it's true. But yeah, you know, we're definitely going to replay the fuck out of those videos, right? StreamYard is nice enough to have the videos backed up, right? So we get a copy of them, right? Even if YouTube removes them, we get to replay them all the time when you're not looking. So good luck with that, folks, right? But yeah, we will show up on multiple mediums, right? I just don't have time right now to get set up somewhere else, right? But yeah, it's only eventual that the people that are watching, right, we will most likely not be, you know, allowed to stream on the main channel for very long. Granted, as such, we have alternative methods, right, alternative ways that people can reach us. We'll figure out what we're going to do, right? If we get a chance to go on the main channel, we'll direct people to the new area here, right? But right now we have no recourse, right? So we'll figure out what to do. But right now it's only time. Sadly, you know, for those people involved, it won't affect us too much, right? So, you know, looks like periodically we may return, and only thing that it's taken off is time. And of course, we don't get paid for doing this, so we're not in a rush to get to the content anyways, right? We have the next 100 or so episodes basically planned, right? In terms of, you know, mainly the material that I'm going to present, right? I go in sort of a sequential fashion, looking at certain ideas and themes, right? And I break them down, you know, using various texts and things, right? So, so yeah, we'll figure out what happens with that, right? But blessings, brother.
What's up, man?
Yeah, what's going on?
Not much. What y'all talking about?
Nothing. I'm just explaining the Nazi block for the few people that are watching right now. So,
we're talking about how
That's crazy.
we're talking about how all your ortho bros are interfering. And I'm just kidding.
Man,
well,
don't call them mine, dude. Those are yours.
well, there's several groups, several groups that have colluded, right? For example, many of the people mentioned on the on the machine lies community post, excuse me, right? So there we've singled out basically everyone that we've attacked, right, on a one-to-one basis, right? And most likely it's one of those groups, right? Because our assessments are usually very accurate, right? When we point out several of the actors in these communities, right? We understand the connections. We watch these people for a very long time before we say anything, right? So when we finally do decide to speak, we already have mountains of evidence against them, right? Or a really poignant, example of their fraud, right? So we have that available on almost all of these names, right? So,
Well, honestly, I watched some of the show yesterday. I think you took it easy on them. That's what's really funny about it.
oh,
Like,
I took it real easy on them. Yeah, that's the thing, is that this is just one little piece of their content. I could watch any number of their videos and continue to harass them. And so this is the thing, is like it was a very small example of what can be done, right?
Yeah, and there's
if
like
you're so
different
afraid,
aspects of it for different people. Like if one of us wants to, like, okay, this is like what theologically they have wrong, or this is what they're morally doing. You know what I mean? Like it could get really systematic if they want that, man. So
exactly, yeah, right. And it's like it's not even that much of a loss, right? To be honest, it's like 10 viewers or so. So I mean, we'll gain that back in no time. All I have to do is go back through the regular channels and networks. It's people know me. So it really doesn't matter at this point, right? So yeah, all it really did cost us is time, right? We're aware of several groups' intentions, right, to try to derail what we're doing here, right? But yeah, so yeah, 2 weeks we'll be back on the, I mean, at least we'll be banned for 2 weeks, so we may be banned forever, right? We'll see what happens, right? As the time progresses, right? But definitely in 2 weeks we will give an update about those things. So in this time, right, we'll be here streaming every now and again, not on a regular schedule, of course, but we do have a few items that I wanted to tackle, especially this James Lindsay talk with Jordan Peterson. We were only 20 minutes into that, and they were going into some pretty strange issues there. A lot of people have reviewed this talk, so I'll take a little critical look at this talk and see what we can make of it. Now, we're very familiar with the origins of leftism, right? And so when they try to say that people on the right are acting like leftists, or they're conceding to certain leftist talking points, we understand that there's an overall assumption within the world technological system, right, that leftism sort of caused the technological system to arise, right? But having done so, it's also supplanted the liberal ideology, meaning that technology basically does everything that liberalism promises it's going to do, right? And it does it without ideology, right? So it's a lot more of an efficient way to reach the conclusions of liberal ideology. Meanwhile, technological society assumes a certain level of atomism and over socialization, and alienation among its constituents, or its inhabitants, right? And obviously a sort of cultural dissimulation, right? The loss of traditions, right? So there's a lot of ideas that cause leftism to coincide with modernism and even the technological sphere, right? But once having done so, it can totally separate itself from that, right? So we have this idea from Jacques Ellul that liberalism gave birth to its executioner, right, which is technology, right? So we understand how conservatives are becoming more liberal, because as technology progresses, it turns the average man into a liberal, because it was a liberal ideology that assumed that technology could solve all our problems for us, right, as we saw. reason, individuality, freedom, mastery over nature, equality, the belief in progress, and all of these items are part of a sort of classical liberal system, right? And they also reflect the origins of leftist ideology itself, right? So we know what leftism is, right? But we're very well versed on these topics. I mean, that's why most people are afraid of our style of dialogue, right? Because they're not aware of these topics. They don't have references. They don't have critical notions. They don't have nuanced viewpoints, right? They simply watch the news. They fap with their other friends. Okay, they slam dance in their circle of eunuchs. Okay, and this is pretty much all they have to offer, right? And then they report your content because they're too afraid to engage.
Did you say slam dance with their circle of eunuchs? That's crazy.
Well, but the funny thing is like a lot of them, you know, they don't even realize the bigger game at hand, and their role in it is probably not what they think it is. As best I can tell, Tolobor actually said a couple things that kind of surprised me because he actually does seem to understand things, but then he pretends them. So I thought,
Yeah, you're breaking apart heavy.
but
yeah, you said.
you know, you can
Yeah, you're breaking apart. Yeah, you're totally roboting.
you know, kind of some thoughts the other day saying like, well, really,
I don't think he can hear me
Paul
either.
left is managerial, which he's right at in a sense, but yeah, I think it's
Should I backstage him? I don't even know what to do at this point.
No, you're roboting.
I mean, the right.
There he goes. He couldn't hear us. He fell out himself. But so Neuro just overheated or forked out. I don't know what to say. But yeah, all I heard was Toilet Bowl Earth actually knows what he's talking about a few points. But yeah, we'll have to get him to come back in and say everything he said again. This is televised apocalypse. Man. Why'd you run away from the Discord? You need to come back in the Discord, homie. Blessings. Let's do this thing. There's no need to leave the Discord. It's not that big of a deal, but yeah, I get sad when the homie. I mean, there's only 5 people in there that talk. One of them leaves. It's kind of a huge loss.
Yeah. It's not much talking as of late. It's just like arguing, calling each other names.
Yeah.
My fault, dude.
It's all good. Yeah, let's see where this is. Woke right. And there goes Neuro. So yeah, I guess we won't have Neuro joining us this time. It's basically his topic. He's basically obsessed with this topic, right, since the beginning. So we have several videos we've seen on this issue. I mean, now it's reached a crescendo because now they're pathologizing people. So it's reached a very strange crescendo with everybody saying everybody's a narcissist or schizo or obviously I said there's a new right and a new left, and it's totally exemplified by the the paranoid schizophrenics on the right, and the autists on the left, and the autists have obviously a self-victimhood complex, and the schizoids, they want to fucking blame everybody and ruin everything. I mean, so there seems to be this general pattern of pathology, but how to assess it. Okay, there he comes. Yeah, I'm gonna ask him to say everything he said again because your audio flailed out there and then you fell out of the chat if you're there, Neuro. All right then. I guess I'll just start this video because Yeah, but blessings to Neuro and his audio issues. We'll figure it out. Schism to Prism. Exactly. That's some accelerationism right there. Right. I don't know. For sure. But yeah, what's up, Neuro?
What's that? Sorry, I'm keep losing service. I was in and out of some
No, it's all good.
buildings and shit. But yeah, I think. Well, I was trying to say something before, but my service dropped. But basically, I was just going to say like we could slice all this stuff a million different ways and still not be done. You know, like you can use the term left or managerial class or all these different things, and that's one thing I've learned from Pill Eater is like depending on your audience, you might want to describe the same thing different ways, but but also you want to be kind of timeless so people can listen to this in 20 years and be like, oh, this is actually like relevant to what's going on now, because that's kind of how I read a lot of history is like, or, stuff from 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 years ago, like it actually explains why this is happening now rather than just, you know, like you said, some sort of little political football thing or something where it's like, oh, well, I like this team and you like this team, and so we'll just banter about it back and forth. Like, yeah, I like Trump, you like Biden, whatever, but
It's deeper than that, man. It's like, I think where we're at today, if you look back in the 20s, like specifically
Oh,
1917 forward, you see a lot of, a replication of like the dialectics and just like uh, how propaganda is pushing certain people into certain movements and ideologies. And
hell yeah. We got the last episode back though. So there's some good news finally.
oh, word.
How about that, folks? We got the last episode of the Machine Lies back. So how about that? We just cut that part out where we had the music there. So the Machine Lies last episode is actually back online. Where we broke down tons about the technological system. Me, Unseen Warfare. We had Joe Cool on. Definitely a crazy conversation.
Oh yeah, that conversation.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that
that
conversation's
was
been
solid.
missing. Yeah, solid conversation that'll be there rocking
The
for a
one
week
I
at
have.
least.
What?
Oh wait,
Awesome.
wait, what was that, Zephyr?
I said that was the one that I hadn't seen and it got taken down. I was
I
like,
know. So yeah, the
huh?
Machine Lies last episode is finally back, motherfuckers. I guess they noticed that a little someone was going live anyways. And
Yeah, that's a nice thumbnail, new thumbnail for that show. I think. I think I
no,
know.
that's the old thumbnail. It's just a regular thumbnail.
There's another show that's on right now. It's really funny, funny. Everybody's piling in over there.
Who's on?
Wait, what are you talking about?
She's saying someone else went live.
Who
Yeah,
that?
maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong.
Wait, who are you talking about, though, Zephyr?
Jack's on right now.
Oh,
I
yeah,
put
Jack's
on.
on. Yeah,
Just put on.
yeah, but is
God,
everybody over there? Because I noticed like Jax wasn't really popping. Why? Because I went over there yesterday. I shut that motherfucker down, and all the little trolls. He kicked them off his panel so he could talk to me.
that picture, there's gonna be some people that click because that's funny as shit.
Oh yeah, I
But
love that picture.
well, if you think about it, that might be why they came after you too, because they look at Jack as their territory or something, whatever. I guess.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, that's true. That's true. They do look at Jack as a territory.
do you remember whenever I was on mushrooms and I went on that show? Because I posted that the other day in the Discord, and I did not remember that. But you were there.
Yeah,
Neurojack was too.
I'm about to go to
That must have been a while because I haven't been on there in quite a while.
That must have been real honest.
7 months ago. It was crazy. Whenever I
I
watched it.
always, when I was younger, take mushrooms, I would get really honest. It's like a truth serum.
Indeed, it is. Yeah, I'm about to take
How
some
dare
of those
you?
soon.
How dare you?
All the time.
Yeah, Yeah, but blessings to the people. We got the new we're just taking a little celebratory break here because we got the last episode of the Machine Lies back, 399 views already. Holy shit. We were rocking out that night. Spooky Saturday. Right? So excellent commentary there on Alul and bunch of different issues. I went really hard on the technology issue. You know what I also find? I find a lot of the banning happens when I go really hard on the technology issue. Like I'm like, we'll have a couple of really good nights where we break a lot of stuff down. And like usually it's pretty regular and like not that many people show up. But then like one night or like 1 or 2 nights, like like the number I see that they really want to get me not to have is like 30 or 40 people. Once it starts reaching that level, they're really like, let's shut this motherfucker down. Because it's like,
Well, you know what else is funny is like this show literally started because we were trying to get other creators to talk about technology, and a lot of other people were like, "Oh, I actually want to talk about that too." And so other people were kind of asking us like to start a show, and you notice like that does get a lot of traction, but as soon as it does get traction, that's when they, like you said, like it's really weird. Like there's a high demand but low ability to maintain an audience, which is interesting. Like some of the people who do cover it and maintain an audience, they're doing very, low level analysis. I mean, or they're doing very like technical analysis, I guess you'd say, but definitely not a philosophical or historical.
I
Like
think
I think that's interesting.
yeah, I think that number definitely was what likely put the ban hammer on you, man. Like for sure, dude. They don't want it's a gatekeeping game, and they want to
Yep.
funnel people into like false dialectics, where it's like EBT versus TV.
Well, I think it hurts people's brains when they start thinking a little bit too hard about the role of technology and all this, because it's easy to do the political thing or historical thing or whatever, but once you bring in the technology side of it, things get a lot more messy, and
why do you think that is? Is it money? What is
well,
it?
what about the recent thing in the Discord where the homies started posting a bunch of Nazi stuff in the Discord? So I think
missed that.
I think they, if I'm not wrong, at some point, and I don't want to put any bad vibes out there, but it's obvious that
it makes you wonder
on many levels.
Well, it makes you wonder who Goblin's working with, because for the longest time, I mean, I could never really figure out what he's all about, but it's really weird that he just
Right, piece of shit. Flow state.
Wait,
just
I think your audio got cut out right there, Zephyr. You got to say that again because a Neuro had like some wind blowing or something. But
that was that's not coming from me, the wind, but
no, but it totally cut out what you said. Say it again, please.
Didn't you see? Well, you probably didn't because you don't watch that shit. I totally do. But probably Tommy, because he just posted that thing, flow state.
Yeah, no. So that's a bold. That's bold. That we literally do a show about Alul. They're literally they're literally afraid of some bald French guy who looks like George Costanza telling them that civilization is on its last ropes. Even though this guy's literally gossip show. I mean, they let him keep his show up, and they allow him to get monetized and have memberships and stuff. So how is that possible? So
I don't know.
Yeah. So something weird is happening around YouTube. Definitely, if you make drama content, you'll be rewarded, and if you make content that is looking at theories and books and views, you'll get censored and blocked. So that's pretty obvious. There's a lot of gatekeeping going on YouTube. They don't want people to know the truth about they don't want people telling people that the books they read are full of false ideas, that the shows they watch are full of lies. They don't want people knowing that, because it doesn't fit their bottom line, right? But other people, right, like Illuma Dummy, are free to make content making threats to people and talking about children and I'm talking pedo and all this stuff, and I'm putting degenerates on, and all that stuff, making jokes.
Yeah, and
Promoting
just
like weird behaviors, you know.
people like
Yeah, promoting
know
gay
what?
shit. I'm promoting occult shit.
Yeah.
Promoting pedophilia. Witchcraft, all that type of shit.
I promote some things like that, but not like they're
No, you don't
doing.
want to sign off on any of
Whoa,
those things
dude.
that I just said, except for maybe witchcraft. But yeah,
Kick her
Yeah,
out.
well, that's
kick
what I'm
her out.
saying.
Yeah, kick her out. Right, right. Kick her out. Kick Zeph. Yeah, Zeph, you don't want to go down that road.
Come on.
Yeah, I mean,
Come to the light.
for me, it's interesting because a lot of, I mean, I don't know much about Goblin. I mean, I never had a bad experience talking to him personally, but a lot of what he says about the whole white nationalist thing is kind of like, I got the impression it's kind of like it's kind of like a meme to him. So I don't know if he really meant it or if it's like I mean, obviously he was just trying to get your Discord in trouble. Obviously, I mean, pretty sure. So, but the point is like that's kind of what the whole white nationalist right stuff is. It's actually a big meme for elitists by elitists, but they're trying to pass it off as like something that the common man can believe in, essentially. So it's this kind of weird, magic trick, I guess I would call it. But and that's not to excuse it, but Pinoy just wrote an article about it, and I was actually writing a response article just before you started the show, so trying to put some of the things I know about on paper.
Yeah,
That's illusion,
if
magic.
if I had to summarize what is woke right, it's right in front of our eyes. I mean, it's the people that pretend to be conservatives and pretend to be patrons of free speech that Nazi block people, censor people, and they can't engage intelligently in the dialogue that you have, but they want you to participate and dance like a monkey to their fucking tune. I mean,
Well, it actually, what's interesting is it makes Obama and Big Mike look like the most conservative politicians we've had in 20 years. So, I mean, that's kind of funny, isn't it?
Exactly, because at least they, didn't plead that, oh, people are coming after us and all this stuff. They just did what they had to do. You know what I mean, right? So this is the problem. It's like they cry out as they strike you, literally. Right.
Yeah.
So it's fascinating, that they can't participate, they can't engage.
Well, you know what they say: if you can't beat the Jays, join the Jays.
Well,
Well, in
that's
that
what some of these guys
conversation
have
I had
done.
with EBT and TBE, what I noticed is that as they're interrupting things, I would say, he would say things to TBE, the other one, he would say things to him like, I learned from the best. And it's like, what do you, like, you learn to interrupt somebody as they're speaking so they can't say, like, expose your lies? You know what I mean? Like, that's the big debate tactic here. Like, it's just kind of shameful, dude. Like, I don't know. Like,
Well, Unseen, let me tell you something. If you haven't gone to the Andrew Wilson School of Debate, I mean, what are you even doing on the internet?
I don't know. See, I don't like to engage like that. Like, if you'll notice, like the way we all talk to each other, it's always like, you have a turn, I have a turn. You know what I mean? And we're all
Well, that's
real
why.
respectful
Well, hold
about
on,
that,
Unseen.
dude.
That's why you've lost every debate. That's why your church is now in the hands of the beautiful, smart, correct people that they are. No, just kidding. Sorry.
Well, for one, you can't like put the church in the hands of somebody that don't hold on to the faith. They can have the buildings, but that's about it.
Well, the only thing that was missing is all the saints should have gone to Andrew Wilson's debate club, and the church would be insane.
But I mean, like that's the thing. Like, I had some hope for DPH, but now he's a PhD, so who knows who he's working for now? But I don't know. We'll see.
Triad to the dark tetrad. And I think the reason for that is that if you have a dark triad orientation towards the world and the
Oh yeah, let's look at this fucking tragedy again. This dark triad configuration that looks like a Jewish star. You know, let's analyze this again because it's worth analyzing because they mention it like 47 times. They see this Masonic figure as some type of and it's literally the thing that the thing that Unseen Warfare presented me with the fucking pathos and the fucking
Yo, what?
ethos, man. I'm serious, man.
Yeah,
I'm
well,
serious.
we could think that one guy that was on that was faking, or what's his name? Was it Pinoid or was it the other one? It was one
here's
of
the
those
thing.
guys, dude. They came on and they were like acting like they're not Freemasons, but throwing little details out there like they are. And that was
This
one
one's
of them.
actually has Hermetic symbols in it. So check this out, Zeph. What symbol is that underneath there?
Oh, that's a trident. Yeah.
Yeah, so interesting.
Yeah.
It actually has a trident
And
on
it's
the
like it's trying to be the cop basically like your light body sort of shield.
Shambhala.
What do they call that thing?
So
See?
It
like
looks like a little butthole plunger like thing like
so
underneath
so
the triangle.
So I have
It's
a couple questions. I have a couple questions really quick because I'm actually going to try to start writing some of this down as articles or I mean, I don't know how I'm going to do it because I suck at writing, but I want to start writing this down. So I have a question really quick. So, in regards to the whole Jungian thing, have you guys ever heard of someone named Hermann Hesse?
Yes. I read a book
Yeah.
by him that was a
Yeah, I
fiction
have his
book.
book. Oh yeah, I have his book right next to me actually. The
J-Mom.
Siddhartha book, right?
So
another
can
book
you can you give me a rough idea of what he's all about? I'm asking for a reason.
Well, he's kind of like a perennial guy, essentially.
Okay, and I mean, so I'll just tell you why I'm asking. Like, one of these actors I followed since I was in my teens, who's now one of the biggest actors in the world. His name is Walton Goggins. If anybody gets a chance to look at this guy, is very, very famous right now. And anyways, I've been convinced he's an occultist for at least 10 years, and he did a GQ, and he referenced three writers: Hemingway, Herman Hesse, and a guy named something Somerset Maugham. Have you guys ever heard that guy before?
No.
I've heard the name Goggin, but only David Goggin.
Yeah, Somerset. You never heard of that guy, Machine? Somerset Maugham.
I don't think so.
So he was a gay secret. What do you call those people? In the secret. What do you call it?
Illuminati or something, or what?
No, the English.
Check this out from Wikipedia. It says that Hess studied theological writings and later Goethe, Lessing, Schiller, and Greek mythology. He also began reading Nietzsche in 1895. So yeah, we're gonna read some Nietzsche later. So that's pretty interesting.
Yeah. And I'm not just bringing it up for no reason. The reason I ask all this is like he was heavily inferring Jungian things to his own life, and let's just say that he's had more than a few strange events where people died in strange circumstances, and I don't want to get into it, but my point is that this whole Jungian, Nietzschean thing, and so this other writer was a gay British Secret Service agent spying and traveling all over the world, having sex with upper class men and basically being a spy for the British Empire all over the world, like literally all over the world, right? And so,
wait, who's this? D.H. Lawrence? I don't know.
Well, I put him in the back. His name is W. Somerset Maugham. But I just wanted to bring him to your attention because
Yeah,
Yeah,
you know,
people get
I think it was in the book Transhumanism by David Livingstone. I think it said that Aldous Huxley was D.H. Lawrence's gay lover. So I was
well,
like, what the
that's
fuck?
kind of well, I don't want to
Or somebody like
call
that.
well, I don't want to call out people who don't want to speak out on it, but I've talked to a couple people who've talked about like why is this whole gay stuff going on? Why is it? I think a lot of people think that it's just like degeneracy, but I think it's actually like it's a lot of it's a cult practice, number one, but it's also like how you keep people secrets. Like, okay, if you want to be in this club, you got to do X, Y, Z, and I don't know exactly, but it seems to go back to some. Oh shit, Twilight's here. Well, hey Twilight. Well, I know
Blessings.
I'm triggering you with what I'm talking about, but basically, this dark triad tetrad. Can you relate that back to kind of like what you and I were talking about the other day, if you don't mind?
Well, I just got here a second ago, so I didn't get the whole context. So if you could just do like an Alex
It's
Jones,
it's like Jordan
pill,
Peterson
put in a
and
pill for a second. Let me say hello to the
yeah,
wonderful people here, though. I want to say
yeah,
hello to
blessings.
Nursery Lies. Good to see you, brother. It's been a while. Unseen Warfare. Good to see you, man.
What's up, dude?
Neuro, of course. Good to see you, man. Elon Musk in the flesh. Anyway. But yeah. Let me know what you're talking about, man, because I don't really know
Well,
exactly what you mean in
well,
context. Just a quick.
I'll do a really quick
Yeah,
take.
yeah. Just real quick. The globalists.
Well, the globalists are coming in and they're trying to. No, so look,
Yeah,
the
yeah,
the
yeah.
dark
I need to
the
know,
dark
like, how does the Council on Foreign Relations and the globalist Nazi, death cult,
so let me put it really simply. The occult is going back to the
But Trump,
1850s.
Trump is for us though, and Elon Musk is definitely going to save the world.
So have you ever heard of you've heard of Herman Hesse and
Allegedly.
Somerset Maugham? You ever heard of Somerset Maugham?
Right, yeah, of course.
And the Jungian stuff with like Jordan
Yeah,
Peterson, the Dark Triad, the
yeah.
Tetrad.
Jordan Peterson
So
was a good guy,
I
and then he
would
kind of sold out. He sold out to the
I would
globalists. Yeah.
I would say it relates back to the process, but can you break it down for people not aware of what we're talking about and like why this matters about the whole like
Yeah, they're making a frog gay. Yeah.
why are they bringing why is Jordan Peterson pushing the Dark Triad Tetrad thing so hard? Like, what do you think the reason behind that is?
Yeah, they all are. And they're like topically Christian too. All of a sudden everybody's like topically Christian. Even the guy who like really hates Christianity, the atheist dude. Um what is his name? I fucking hate that guy. Uh Richard Dawkins. Yeah. Even he's like, we were better off, with like a cultural Christianity. They call it cultural Christianity.
Well, why do you think they're pushing this narrative so hard though about the whole Jungian Dark Triad Tetrad psychology thing?
Right. Well,
New Age. It's the New Age movement.
it's for the new age religion, man. Of course, come on, it's the externalization of the hierarchy. It's what I was telling you
But
about how
but but, but
Blavatsky
I mean
got hijacked by Annie Besant and Alice Bailey, who were fucking 33rd degree Freemasons at least, and members of the Fabian Society. Like, to make it simple, like you read the externalization of the hierarchy is written in
I
the
got
20s,
something on
published.
this right here that
Yeah,
could be like.
Unseen and I have talked about this too. Like it goes way back, man. And then the whole like gay agenda, I say the gay agenda, like I have no problem with homosexuals, lesbians, like gay, whatever. Like they do in their own business, that's for them and their maker
well,
or
well,
monkey ancestor, whatever the fuck they believe in.
but
That's up
but
to
but
them.
there,
I have no issue
but
with
there's
that. But
but there's
but as
obvious.
a political agenda, like they're trying to slide in the P letter into the like that's kind of the whole thing.
Yeah,
That and like animals, like they've literally talked about this. It's in UNICEF. It's in like just for the people. This is for the people. But
but
Jack,
wouldn't you say
just
that
relax for a minute. Let me relax for a minute, Alex. Okay. This
but
is why I
wouldn't you
call
say
you
that it's
Alex. No,
wouldn't
hold
you
on,
say
hold
that
on. Let me get one thing before I get
okay
to another one, Alex.
okay
That's why I
okay
call you
okay
Alex, okay? Because you like try to jump to too many things, like I was when I was younger. All right, so let me break this down. All right, so that's the thing is like the gay, what people think was the gay agenda. That's why I'm kind of mocking it, because really what it is with like the transgender and all that was just kind of a way for them to get people comfortable enough to where it's like, oh well, there's no gender. Why can't men and men get married, and why can't women and women get married, and why can't kids get married? That's the next thing. And it's like, well, maybe animals can feel love too, and what is age really? We can just have transhumanism, and if you're in a transhuman reality, then what is age and gender and all that? It doesn't really exist at all, so we can just do anything. That's basically what it is, man. They want to bring back Babylon, like quite literally. That's really
Okay.
what it is. It's all stepping stones.
All right, Neurojack, what were you saying real quick? Because I do have something for
Well,
this.
really quick, I just wanted to make the connection between, the occult reasons for that. I guess what I'm saying is, like you say, the
Androgyny.
external.
It's a distortion of androgyny.
Okay,
It's
right.
a distortion of the chemical marriage. What's supposed to be an internal process of bringing together the masculine and feminine energies within, they're externalizing it, and it goes back to the castrati and what we were talking about, the dark feminine cult at the top. I told you about. There's a reason that you have the owl. Nothing to do with Moloch. Moloch. I don't know why everyone keeps saying that the owl is Moloch. Moloch has never been a symbol associated with an
It's
owl.
Lilith.
Well, you could say that. It's just that these symbols are ambivalent. Symbols are all symbols are ambivalent. They
Right.
can
So,
mean
but if you ever look at a depiction
yeah,
of Lilith, she has owl feet, and there's always two owls
yes,
next to her.
yeah, yes,
Okay.
yes,
But all right. So this is something that I was going to say about Jung. So concurrently, there's now a movement in contemporary Roman Catholicism to assimilate the teachings of Carl Jung, one of
yes,
the founding fathers of the New Age movement. Jung, who participated in seances and admitted to having, quote, spirit guides, taught
yes,
that the exclusion of the, quote, dark side is a fatal flaw in Christianity, and that therefore needs to be a fourth hypostasis added to the Holy Trinity, Lucifer. His theories are being extolled in Roman Catholic seminaries and workshops, and his psychotherapy is being practiced in some Roman Catholic churches by monks and nuns in some monasteries. Episcopal and Protestant, and especially Methodist churches have also entered this movement. A number of Protestant ministers also work as Jungian analysts rather. Within many mainline Christian churches, there's a strong and determined movement to, quote, reimagine the Christian faith along the lines of radical feminist theology, neo-pagan goddess worship, and
yeah,
a New Age worldview. In 1993, the first Reimagining Conference was held in Minneapolis, Minnesota, in conjunction with the World Council of Churches' Ecumenical Decade of Churches in Solidarity with Women. The conference was attended by over 2,000 participants from 27 countries and 15 mainline denominations, most prominently the Presbyterians, the Methodists, the Lutherans, the Roman Catholics, United Church of Christ, and American Baptist. 1/3 of the participants were clergy, speaking of the need to, quote, destroy the patriarchal idolatry of Christianity. The conference speakers rejected at times ridiculed the Christian dogmas of the Holy Trinity, the fall of man, the unique incarnation of God in Jesus Christ, and the redemption of man by Christ's death on the cross. In place of these articles of faith, the conference promoted pantheism, shamanism, and homosexual rites. The participants took part in a, quote, liturgy, wherein milk and honey were used rather than bread and wine, and the goddess, quote, Sophia was worshipped rather than Jesus Christ. The chant was repeated, quote, our Maker, Sophia, we are women in your image. With our warm body fluids, we remind the world of its pleasure and sensations. At a later At a later reimagining conference held in 1998, Sophia worshipping participants also shared biting into large red apples to express their solidarity with Eve, whom they regard as a heroine for having partaken of the forbidden fruit. Although conservative Christians have spoken out against the conference, the reimagining community remains influential within mainline churches, holding interdenominational caucuses to discuss strategies for expansion. Worship of the goddess Sophia continues within these churches. As recently as June 2004, during the Presbyterian General Assembly in Richmond, Virginia, a quote, Voices of Sophia meeting was held in which Sophia was invoked as a goddess. More significantly, feminist theology has become the most prominent trend on mainline seminary campuses today, and is a driving force within the ecumenical movement. The main coordinator in the 1993 Reimagining Conference, Mary Ann Lundy, is now the director of the World Council of Churches. At the 1998 Reimagining Conference, she made clear the agenda of both feminist theology and modern-day ecumenism. Quote, we are learning that to be ecumenical is to move beyond the boundaries of Christianity. We see yesterday's heresies are becoming tomorrow's book of order. As we have seen, this is always the agenda of the New Age movement. That's from an article entitled The Leaven of New Age Spirituality.
Yeah. So they just repurpose everything basically and twist it and contort it like they always have, and that's basically it. Everything is neutral, and they want to take bits and pieces of everything. You know, of Hinduism, of paganism, of feminism has always been rotten for the core, and it's fucked up because they call
Well,
they call Lilith a feminist icon, and that's like the most ridiculous thing in the world when you actually understand what Lilith represents.
so this is why I brought it up, because you and I were kind of dancing around this a little bit, and I'll just come out and say what I think is like, when you see all this anti-feminist rhetoric, actually what they're doing is drawing people into feminism.
Yeah.
Would you
Yeah,
agree with
well,
that?
it's all a dialectic. Whether you're against it or for it, you're still in the trap.
Yep,
You have to step out of it completely. If
I
you're
agree.
any for or against, you're losing. You have to step out of it completely.
Can I be
That's
for
really the
humanity?
only way.
Is it okay if I'm here for humanity and the
Hey,
earth?
Zephyr.
Because I think that's probably okay. Being here for
No, it's
Zephyr
not good to
Zephyr
be
knows what I'm
for the
talking about.
earth. It's
Zephyr knows what I'm talking
idealism,
about.
Zephyr. That's why.
Zephyr knows what
why
I'm talking about.
Because the earth is going to end in fervent heat.
Well, yeah, that's a really long ways away, though. I think I could be down with the Earth for now.
I mean, they called the bot, the AI bot
Later than you
Sophie
think.
too. So I mean, they love to like denigrate the goddess. They called the
Yeah,
terrorist ISIS. They do this shit all the time. You know,
Well, haven't they made the Earth kind of like a surrogate Lilith in a sense?
yeah. Well, she's the dark earth. That's what she represents, the dark earth. I'm not going to get into all that. That's
Well,
clifothic
I
gnosis. It'll take a while to get into, but
asked a
it's
question.
Lilith. But the idea of Lilith representing feminism is like
Yeah,
disgusting
silly.
when you really understand, because Lilith represents absolute equality, not fake equality, real equality. And
Yep.
feminism is anti-equality, just like MGTOW is anti-equality. So that's what I'm saying. If you're in either camp, you're missing the point. It's all to create division and chaos and disorder, so that they can come in and bring order. So they create the disorder, and then when everyone's freaking out saying you must do something, and then they come in and bring the order. Whether it's the church, whether it's the government, whether it's whomever, any external power, period, is a bad idea. Is what I'm saying. People are free to believe what they want, but
Yeah.
to me, the only way is for people to become self-sufficient and self-governing. That is the only way, in my gnosis, in my experience from looking at this shit since I was a teenager, and like, but the owl is actually somebody said it in the chat. It's Minerva,
Yep.
and it's Athena, and it's Nuit if you really want to go way back. Nuit, the Egyptian goddess. Lilith is represented with an owl, but it actually goes back to Inanna. When she was Lilitu, she was the serpent in the garden of Inanna, and then it
She
goes
has
back to like
bosses too, right?
Samaria and all that. And she's called the Queen of the Night, and it goes because Lilith is like a new addition, because they kind of like appropriated her
Right, there's the
because she's
Bernay
much
relief of the
because
Queen of
she's
the
much
Night.
because she's much older than that. They kind of like took her from other cultures and kind of put her there, and they're just like, okay, well, she's Adam's first wife. Well, there's also mythology that says that she's Jehovah's wife. So, you gotta kind of like take it for a grain of salt. Um, with all that, uh, but she goes back to these
Okay,
dark gods, and
we got a new panelist here. Yeah, blessings. To Nick Volt. Thank you for joining.
Good afternoon.
Hi.
but it basically goes back to what are known as the castrati, and you essentially had goddess cults that were, shall we say, benevolent, and you had ones that weren't so benevolent. And the ones that are in control right now are not so benevolent, and that is the tippy top of the pyramid. People can believe me or not. I can show you in so many ways. And all you got to do is look at like Ghislaine Maxwell and the Queen and like and you start to understand like who do knights serve. You know, who you look at all the symbolism they use. Why do they use an apron? Why do they cover the generative principle?
Well,
And you start to put all this shit together, and you start to realize, wait a minute now, like what is this royal song about? What is the dark horse? And you can go on and on and on and on and on, and they show you. It's all over the place if you really
well,
look. And you start
before
to
we
understand, like that's really what it is. It's about androgyny. It's about destroying the true divine feminine essence and replacing it with what's known as the devouring mother, the Electra complex. And that's what's actually, that's the ironic part, is the patriarchy is being brought by a dark matriarchy that you don't see.
Yeah, hold on. Homie,
That's,
let Neuro I'm coming here.
Oh no, just really,
Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to tie it
oh,
back
me
to
and Neuro had a
Dugan.
long conversation about this.
Yeah, no, I just want to tie it back to the dark to
And then you get the 764 and all that. You know what I'm talking about, Neuro.
yeah. Well, I just want to tie it
Very
back to
dark
the
shit.
I want to tie it back to Dugan's dark logos, if you guys don't
Yeah.
mind. That's what I want to tie it back to.
And the dark Baphomet, which is the mistress of the earth, and all these cults that follow a dark matriarchy that like openly, like it's twisted stuff, man.
Well, and so far I have not had enough bitterness to turn me over to that. So that's all I got to say.
It's never too late. It's never too late, Zephyr.
Oh, hush. I got no quit in me.
No, she's one of the good ones.
Yes.
So you're saying the dark logos is like a pseudonym for uh the dark Shekinah or whatever you want to call it.
That's exactly what it is. Like I said, man, you some of this is actually becoming more obvious now.
Yep.
Because you can look at like 764 and like parts of, like I said, the Order of Nine Angles got hijacked, and you can look in their own text and they'll tell you like they're they're run by a dark matriarchy.
You never know if you didn't look.
You know,
It's not really obvious to people that aren't that. I think that anybody who isn't self-initiated is probably suspect. Yes,
you,
that's
you,
why
you
I.
gotta understand, man. Like even the pharaohs could not be pharaohs unless the queen said so. It's
What do
called the
you mean
Great
by
Royal Rise. Like
what do you mean by self-initiated? What does that mean?
I
I
was
wasn't
self-initiated.
trained by any group. I wasn't trained by any group. Most of my knowledge did not come by any books.
Yeah,
Afterwards to verify.
yeah. Me and
It's
Zephyr were born this way,
yeah. Sorry, it's kind
quite
of true,
literally.
but
Yeah. Yeah,
We
but I
had a
get
long ass conversation
yeah,
about
but I
all
get why
this.
the homie's confused is because initiation means a set order of following to constraints that you would possibly
it is.
glean from some sort of
Yes,
authority, right?
usually by people, yes, but we were initiated by
Right.
the
So
spirits
so
themselves. So more from
okay.
like a shamanic angle, really.
So
So in
well,
earlier cultures, we would be more considered
So
shamans.
it's more of like a Pentecostal type of thing. Like,
Well, usually, okay, well, like basically what I'm telling you, and this is what I try to explain to Jack too. Like, I don't care if somebody is a 98th degree Freemason. If they
Me
haven't
neither.
actually communicated with the spirits, they don't know anything. Because
hold on.
all of their degrees are coming from man.
So
So they
here's
still
where
haven't really done the real work.
here's where I want to draw the parallel. Unseen, if you're there, what it sounds like it's they're talking about the Holy Spirit. What would you say about? Would you say
What?
that what they're talking about is like the Holy Spirit?
No.
Well, like what I mean is like the Holy Spirit is what gives you divine revelation, correct?
Dude, I accidentally asked you to help me and you did it. Do you think that's just for nothing?
Yeah, but I mean, there's a
I'm not
a
aware.
sacramental process where that goes through, and
That's what
what
there.
I hear with a lot of people is like there's not a lot of testing of spirits. That's something that it's well known because the
Yeah,
devil can appear as an angel of light,
absolutely.
and from my experience, it's like there's a very set way that God had intended for the Holy Spirit to be given. And if we're not going about the routes that he kind of laid out, then I think that we could be led astray pretty easily. But you know,
Yeah, it's fine. You can suspect people all you want, but you can't do this by yourself.
Mr. Volt, what do you think of this conversation? Is it great
Well,
or crap?
once I tried to test this goo I found in my books, and like I thought it was ectoplasm, but turned out to be some like weird, like bacterial growth. It's kind of gross.
That's weirdly random.
Well, you were talking about testing for spirits and stuff like that, so my mind immediately went to how could we test for spirits?
Ghostbusters.
That's what I was thinking. That was my plan.
Yeah, you,
But
you
then I
gotta
did want to
find.
try to drill a hole in my head too, just like
I think
Egon.
that
have you
would be
guys ever
kind
read about Saint Nikitas of the Key of Caves?
Marshmallow Man. I would suggest.
I think
But
even
you can still.
people that are evil probably would test positive for all of that spirit. They just
Well,
aren't aware
it
of it.
doesn't have anything to do with evil people because even people that seem to be good and loving Christians like the Pentecostals, they fall into like these occult experiences, and they call it the Holy Spirit, and they roll on the floor and bark like dogs and laugh and do all types of weird things.
They're fun to watch.
Do you think that irredeemable people? Do you think some people are irredeemable?
I think everybody's to an extent redeemable, but there is a point in time where,
Well,
like,
why
let's
do you cut
say,
them off?
what do you
Call
mean?
them demons. Sorry, I'm a little bit upset about this.
No, I don't think I'm calling anybody a demon. I'm saying that there are demons and they do things. But anyways,
Mm.
like in a situation with like the Pentecostals, okay, they'll say, well, I touched the Bible and then I got all this information, and I have a spirit that helps me and all this stuff, and they fall into some form of prelest. That's what the great ascetics of the church have taught, and even great ascetics fell into it. It's like even the elect can be led astray if we're not actively participating in, not to be corny, but unseen warfare. Then it's like you can fall into some things, and as far as I understand, like both of you guys are talking about, you're very aware that you're working with you know spirits that are not of God.
No, I did never say that. I never said that. Everything is of God.
So, so you think demons are of God, in the sense that
Whatever
they'll
they
lead you to
challenge,
God?
without that challenge, how could I be better? I think that's kind of the point, but most people don't want to hear that.
Well, I mean, it seems like there's something that you don't want to hear.
What is that? What do you think it is?
I think that, being initiated by the demonic is not going to lead to a great outcome.
If you say so, that's fine with me. I can meet you in the middle.
Well. Hold on. Aren't we really talking about determinism versus free will? Like, if it's free will, then we're here to be tested. If it's determinism, then everything's happening according to plan. or compatibilism, which is a little bit of both? Where would you guys say that you see all this at?
Sometimes the gate is narrow, sometimes it's
Mental
wide.
determinism or physical determinism? There's a difference.
Spiritual.
What is the difference?
It's all spiritual. It's all spiritual.
I've never heard that before.
There's a big difference.
I mean, one could argue that mental processes are physical processes.
No.
So, like, what would the difference be?
Physicalist determinism is different.
Well, I kind of see what Zephyr's trying to say. I'm not saying I totally agree, but she's saying that life is to be tested so we can be put through the crucible of life, and then we go to the next stage. And then unseen, I want to know what your response is to that, like, notion. How would you characterize
Sure, you
it?
want to be tested, but not initiated.
Huh? What does that even mean?
Unless some guy does it. Unless some guy does it like the proper way. That
It's not just
is
some
very
guy. A
controlled
lot of
and not to
times,
be.
I mean, if you see, but then there's this rebellion against, structure and control and all these other things, and then the world's in chaos, and people wonder why.
They're two sides of the same coin.
Yes.
Well,
No,
I think what
there's
he said,
absolute truth, and there's the absolute,
I think
antithesis of that, and that's the demonic.
I think what Unseen's saying is, like, if you're not doing it the exact right way, then basically self-initiation is actually means you're under the influence of something else, because basically God may intervene and give you grace, but it's the power of discernment is not something that is just going to be handed out freely. Like, imagine you give a kid totally adult discernment. Well, what can that kid do with that power, right? You see what I'm saying? Like, and I think that's kind of.
And there's levels of grace. So, for example, it's like everybody that is led to God has experienced the Holy Spirit to some degree, but they haven't experienced the Holy Spirit on a sacramental level. What I mean by that is like baptism, chrismation, taking part in the Eucharist. These are divine mysteries given to us by God for a specific purpose of
really
healing
weird.
us.
Let me do that whenever I went to church.
Well, because I don't know, maybe
I
were you a catechumen? Did you go through with catechesis, or I don't know.
wasn't even offered it.
Well, you're not offered it until you go through catechism.
Well, the other thing is this, like, sorry to interrupt you, Zephyr, but Unseen doesn't think that most Christian things are even Christianity. Ultimately, they're kind of like abominations.
For sure, we agree on that. I agree with you on most things.
Right. Right. But where I'm getting the sharp disagreement is at this juncture where, at first you said, and I think that Twilight agreed that you were self-initiated by the spirits, and then later in the conversation, the spirits turned out to be demons. Right.
Sometimes they are.
and then so that's when I think Unseen started tripping out, and then I think also then you said the demons and the spirits are the same thing, right? So that's when I think a good place to begin the conversation would be if you think that evil exists. I mean,
Excuse me.
I think it does, but I think God created it just like everything else.
What do you think about it? What do you think about it?
I think that it sucked ass and it showed me that I didn't have any quit in me. Like none. Like I really, really wanted to
But you
give
try
up.
to avoid evil, right?
Absolutely. And
you try to join in good?
Yep.
So essentially,
but I try to find it in bad places too, because it's everywhere. A little bit of good needs to be rescued.
Right. Yeah, but I think this is like where our viewpoints differ, is that on like good and evil, right? Is like I understand the dualistic belief that good and evil are equal opposing forces, right? But I don't believe that's the case, and I don't believe that God created evil. I don't think He gave us that. I think that evil is without substance, and it only has substance when man gives into it. It's not
So,
necessarily
so,
created.
so if he didn't create it, then what would? But you would say he just made it a possibility. He left it as an open-ended possibility.
I would say that we created it through our disobedience
How could we do that?
because we went against what God intended for us by
Why
taking
would you
part
tell us,
in
knowing
something
our
that He
nature,
told us not to.
not to do something and expect us to actually not do it?
Well, because He told us to, and
I,
a
I,
part of having
Yeah.
paradise, there's some expectations that come along with that.
I,
Okay.
I still fail to understand what we did that God said we shouldn't do.
Yeah.
Transgress His
What is?
commandment.
Yeah, well, that's just a word. What does that mean?
We were tempted
Well,
by the
if have you
need
read
for
Genesis?
Of course.
Okay, so then they were
Well,
told not
that's
to eat from the
no.
tree of good and evil. Correct?
And what exactly did that tree give us?
It gave us the knowledge of good and evil.
Ooh, knowledge.
Yeah,
And
but
what choice
the
between good and evil?
knowledge itself is
Well, more specifically,
inferior to divine knowledge.
But then
it's more
what?
specifically pride. It says pride cometh before the fall.
Yeah.
Well,
Well,
What?
and also, really quick, knowledge does not always mean knowledge in the sense that we think of it. When you say you know a woman, it doesn't mean that you know her. It means that you've slept with it, you've seduced it, you've been seduced by it. See what I mean?
you have information about it.
Right. Well, see, that was the whole thing with the devil. It's like the devil had fallen. He rebelled. He's there. He possesses the snake because Adam names the snake a serpent, designating it to be intelligent. That it's
But
in the word itself.
then
Okay.
what would it mean to be human in the Garden of Eden? Let's say before the fall. Like, yeah, what would you define
It was a
humanity as?
higher state for man. So there was no death. There was a connection with God. There was
But then
no there was
would you
no
argue that we were still human
suffering.
then? I mean, that's a completely
Well,
different.
so you look at it as evolutionary. They look at it as de-evolutionary. We started out
I
perfect,
don't
and
I,
we
I don't know I don't know if I would call it that either, because it's like I would look at it as a state that is closer to angelic, but it's not necessarily an angel either, but it's like something a little higher than we are now.
So we
uh
weren't necessarily human then.
so I'll give you an example, like no, we were human beings, but we were just a higher state than we are
we
now.
were we
So
were ubermensch. We was
when
ubermensch.
there's a clairvoyant elder, okay, and he can see the past, the future, and the present all at once, that's sort of like a hint of what that state would be like. Or like when Christ resurrected, he was able to move through doors and
Like go through
almost
them.
change forms a little bit. It's like he's still, man, God and man, but he's reached a
He's
higher
it.
state.
Well, it's like in the world, but not of the world, essentially.
Absolutely.
So that wouldn't be a human then.
No, it wouldn't be a human according to your definition of what a human being is, but that we fell away from the image that we were intended to be.
Well, if we redefine what a human being is, then we could just
No, it's you that's
we could say anything
redefining.
we want. I mean,
If
we
we
could just.
started at this point, it's you that's redefining.
I mean, that's not too different than what Scientologists say. I mean, we could just make up a being that's attached to us, but we need to find religion to get rid of that being. I mean,
Well, no,
it
it's
doesn't make
very
any
different.
sense.
It's very different, sir.
How so?
And why is that different? Is because Scientology, for one, the whole thing was to push for Antichrist, the incarnation of Antichrist into man.
Okay.
And the whole distinction for Christianity is to get man to the point of theosis. And what is theosis? It's the connection with God and man, to reestablish that connection, because we lost it somewhere along the way. One's for the greatest evil ever known, and one's for the greatest good. They can't be compared. It's comparing apples to oranges.
Well,
It's
what about comparing it
ridiculous.
to, let's say, Buddhism?
You couldn't compare it to Buddhism either, because it's
Why
an
not?
impersonal God, and within Christianity, there's a personal God to have a relationship with.
So basically, you're saying Christianity is correct because we I can't pronounce that word.
No, it's
We
not.
think of
It's not correct
God as
because of
human.
some rhetoric that we
What
talk
about
about.
Hinduism
Oh, what about it?
compared to?
You do X, you get Y. That's Hinduism.
What do you mean you do X, you get Y? I
It's
think.
black magic. That's what that is. You
Oh, so
do
that's
X, you
black.
get
That's
Y.
black magic. I don't
Yeah.
think that's correct.
Yes, it
Uh,
is. Yes, it is. So
no,
you're telling me
Hinduism.
that in
Hinduism.
Hinduism that
Hinduism it doesn't
they
do
don't do
magic.
X and they get
They don't
Y
do.
as like,
Well, what is X? You got to define X.
okay, X
We're
is
going to
like a
use X as a
Sanskrit,
variable. You got to define a variable.
a Sanskrit incantation, and then maybe you go
Oh,
to
okay.
your
They
guru and you get
okay.
boons or something,
They chant. What about
or you
Sikhism?
offer
No.
like
Okay, so they
sugar and nuts to an ice image in a cave that wanes and waxes.
which
This is
is
very
different
different.
than offering prayers to the Virgin Mary. But okay, fine.
Absolutely, it's different
Incantations.
because
What
one,
what about Sikhism?
I'll tell you. No, let's stay on
What's
the
the difference
subject,
there?
sir. So
No.
Okay.
This is the subject.
I want to stay on the subject, Nick. Okay, so
I understand. I'm
with the
asking about
waning and
different
waxing in
religions
a
compared to
cave,
yours.
right? So this person went to Africa, right? And they went to a fugai rituals, right? And they would slit chickens' throats and look at the blood, and divine out of that,
I have no
right?
idea
And there
what
was a
you're
certain
talking about.
energy that would be around these tents in Africa when this person did this, and they said that
Yeah.
it felt demonic, and they seen demonic things in this. They went there an atheist, and they left thinking that there's something else.
Okay.
Well,
And
they studied Hinduism, and then they went to the this
wait, I'm sorry.
waning and
Are you claiming?
waxing
I'm
cave with an
sorry.
ice image,
Are
and
you
they got the
claiming?
same feeling.
Are you claiming
But do you get
Hinduism
that
started?
feeling of
Are you
demonic
claiming that
presence?
I don't.
Hinduism
If
started in
I could
Africa?
be-
I didn't claim that, Nick. What
Okay,
I'm
So,
tell
talking
us.
about is that,
I'm not
there's a
focused. I don't want to be
comparison with.
focused on Hinduism. I'm
So,
just
look,
comparing
what
Started
we're
in
your.
going to do is
Scandinavia.
we're going to talk over me, right? Because you
No,
don't
no,
want
because
to really have a
because
conversation.
It
no, because
started in Scandinavia, man.
you're
Yeah.
focused on Hinduism. What about
No,
Sikhism?
you want to create a
What
fallacy.
about Sikhs? No, I'm just comparing your religion to
They're
others.
all
Like what
demons,
makes.
man. They're all demons. Every one of them is demons.
But how do I know that?
They're all demons.
Discernment, and it's
Man,
either you have eyes to see and
she's
ears
got
to
the
hear, or you
same
don't.
answer.
No.
They're all
You can't.
evil
It's so
satanic.
basically they're not true religions because you say so.
They have truth in them, but it's broken reflections of truth
Well,
and
how do you
why.
know they have truth in them? I mean, what do you know about Sikhism? Is it that
Because
it doesn't
everything's
have truth? What
God.
truth does it have?
Why are you talking so fast and talking over me when I'm talking? Why are
Well,
you so
because
triggered right now, Nick?
no, I think you're the one who's triggered because you sort of get away with this argument by talking a lot of poppycock. Quite frankly, you just say words which sound intelligent, but you really have no idea what you're talking about. You just
That's
go,
your
"Oh, this is."
assumption. That's your assumption.
No,
But
it's
I
not my
mean,
assumption. It's my observation.
okay, it could
There's
be
a
an
big difference.
observation, but that's just your
And then when you get
opinion,
put in a
man.
corner, you just accuse the other side of talking over you or this or that.
Well, you
Yeah,
did. So what do you want me to say to that?
well, I was trying to keep you on
Now you
topic.
wanted to send this thing into rhetoric and turn it into an argument because
No,
whatever.
it's not an
Because it's
argument. It's a
ridiculous to
debate. It's
compare
a debate.
Christianity to these other
Watching
religions.
me.
Why would it be ridiculous to
Watch.
I
compare
have already showed the
Christianity?
absurdity in it.
No, but you
Watch.
haven't. You can't just say you've showed it and then claim victory. You haven't shown anything. All you've shown is, well, I'm right and you're wrong.
Hey, Lucifer.
Right?
Can I ask a question? Did I do that?
Did I do that?
I think what I'm trying to say is you talk about pride and you talk about hubris.
We'll blame the woman.
You sound like
Damn
you have the
it.
pride and the hubris. I'm right, everybody else is wrong. And I don't
I
understand
didn't
what
say that
gives you
either.
that
This
authority.
is the strategy. You control the narrative. You manipulate a situation where you say I
Yes.
said things I didn't say to get the audience on your side for your argument.
Well,
I
I
know
Do
the
you
think
not?
game, Nick.
the discussion is getting too much about the discussion. I mean, what was a point that you guys seem to be
the
disagreeing
point
about?
the point that he was trying to make is Nick saying that if it's black magic when they pray to their avatars or whatever, and then what's the difference between you praying to God and Mary? Like he's trying to say, like, what's the distinction that's measurable or whatever.
That is correct. That's all I was trying to say.
Good one. That was awesome.
Okay, well, I'll tell you the distinction. Okay. One, we
Dude, you're
have
not supposed to
300
talk.
prophecies in the Old Testament that attest to that God will send a virgin who will give birth to the incarnate God, right? And we get it from prophets. And one of the prophets was King David. And King David said, the gods of the nations are demons, but the Lord created the heavens. So We already have a distinction from these prophets that say there's one true God. And all the prophets are saying the same thing. Moses, Ezekiel, Isaiah, David, all these guys are saying the same thing, that there's one true God, and that these other gods of the nations are pagan gods and they're demons. And we have Ezekiel going, and having a duel basically with the prophets of Baal, where he proves that the true God is who he says he is. Well, these 300 prophecies end up coming true with the incarnation of Christ. Okay. He'll be led as a lamb to his shearers and will not open his mouth. That happened. Okay. He gets crucified. We have all this documentation that says he resurrects. Right. And then there's miracles associated with this for the last 2,000 years. And people go to church every single day and they take communion and, they get baptized and they feel the grace of God. And they go to liturgy. There's no, there's no like this feeling of the demonic, like you would in like a Foga ritual or a
Okay. Let me stop you.
sacrificing
Let me stop
nuts
you
to a
there.
nice image.
You were making sense up until you get it. You see, that's what you do. You start talking about demonic and this. Now let's just stick what you said. So Christianity is correct because multiple people prophesied that Jesus would come. Correct?
Not just multiple people.
No,
That's
but that's one aspect.
That's your way of.
No, that's one aspect of it. I'm not saying that's it. I'm just
That's
saying.
not what I'm going to say, because that would be blasphemous to say that they're just people, because they're not just people. They're
if I
saints to
could,
me.
if I could also, interject on a much more physical level, and not talk about the justification behind why praying to an icon, praying with an icon is different than praying to an idol. And that's actually what it is that with the icon, you're praying with it, right? It's not actual praying to the physical thing itself.
No,
right? Whereas,
it's not the icon itself that holds the energy. It's the person. It's like having a photograph of your loved one, and this person has passed, and you're saying, I love you, Mom, or something.
Yeah, so there's a different.
So
there's a difference in scale in terms of the philosophical justification because of the notion of transubstantiation and the essence and energies and all of that type of stuff. So, there's a difference on that level. But other than that, go on.
with an idol. Let me get this straight. Now, when let's say like a Buddhist is in their temple and they have the idol of Buddha in the center, do they believe that Buddha is his essence is in the statue itself?
Well, that's a little different altogether than either of the two things that I mentioned. So so let's not. Yeah,
that's called a God form.
Yeah, let's not get totally confused because one of the Buddhist one of the Zen Buddhist teachers literally wrote the Buddha is a shit stick, which is the thing that they wipe their ass with. Right.
Wow.
So
let's
not.
True.
But let's go to Nick Volt. You were challenging the justification behind the claims that he made.
Yeah, well, again, all I hear is just words. You claim all these people prophesied that there was one God. Now you're claiming that Jesus resurrected, and you say there's evidence for that. It's no, people don't rise from the dead. That doesn't happen.
According to you, right?
Well, according to me. And my point is, every religion has its own creation story, has its own mythology.
That's a fallacy. Just because all these religions have that doesn't mean that one can't be true.
Well, that's the point. It's what makes yours true.
You're putting a doubt.
Other than you just saying mine is true and everybody else is false.
Your cognitive bias says that this can't happen.
Blessings.
Well, it did happen. No.
Well, maybe lying.
So your evidence is it happened because
maybe they're all true.
No, maybe they're not all true. Maybe they have pieces of truth, but
maybe
one is the truth.
Maybe they do have pieces of truth.
And talk about pride and hubris, saying that my religion is the one true religion with
zero
evidence.
Pride if
zero
it's
evidence.
It's
probably
pride
against
true, Nick?
your religion.
What if God is bigger than any religion, in any book, in any?
What if He created?
I would argue with that. If there is a God, like why would God care?
Right, you feel what I'm saying, Nick?
Because there's
like what if God has been with us since the beginning of time?
The reason
is God really that
you ask
petty?
the question and then
wouldn't it make sense?
We move away from it. Okay.
Is God really that petty?
Wouldn't it make sense that God would reveal itself from the beginning?
Shut up.
Because
If God created religion, why did he do it?
Unseen, I
It's
love you, brother.
to get man back to a state to communion with God. That's the purpose of it.
Okay, but Buddhism says you should become one with yourself. Hinduism
You're
says
still my
this.
brother.
Sikhism says something else. Judaism says this.
Again,
I
why
mean,
would the fallacy? So what? So what
well,
they say
so
those
what
things?
that your religion says it?
Because it's true.
Well, I mean,
Oh,
what
because
Jesus said is
okay,
different than what the
is
religion
that
says.
true with a lowercase
So,
t or a capital T?
No,
yeah.
it's a capital T.
Okay,
T
so
because you know why?
it doesn't really.
Well,
But we're
I'll tell you
using
why.
true. We're
I'll
using
tell you,
true
Nick, why.
not in
If
the
you want to
sense of the
hear it, or you
word.
don't want to keep interrupting.
Well, let's
Christ
go
says,
with
"I
this.
am the
It
way, the
seemed like
truth, and the life, and there's no way to the Father but through Him."
Okay,
None of
great.
these
well,
other religions say that.
yeah, but
And
it seemed
let me
like
ask you this: if you had happened to be born in, let's say, India,
follow.
you would have been Hindu,
Jesus
and
is
then you would be
word.
up
crazy.
there.
That's
You would have been
also a
up here.
fallacy because
No,
there's
you would have been
churches in
up here
India.
talking about how great blah 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 Hinduism
There's
is.
churches in India. There's churches in
But I
Greece.
think
There's
Shiva is the
churches in
one to
Russia. There's
you.
churches in
Shiva
I
is the
mean,
one
he
America.
for you.
convert.
Who's to say
You should
if I was
study,
born
yes.
somewhere else? That's another
just by
fallacy,
Yes.
Nick.
pure
Yeah, I think he
happenstance.
converted to
You're the
orthodoxy.
Shiva. Shiva
Yeah,
is
but
the one
still,
for you.
and you said we're all under influence. That I agree
Allah
with.
Krishna.
We
Yes.
are all under influence, and the influence which
Yes.
actually is there is our own upbringing, our own
Yes, Sanatana Dharma.
experiences, which lead us to believe certain things.
Correct.
I wasn't raised
and
Orthodox.
God
This man
speaking
is
to us
correct.
Right, right. He converted
mostly.
at some point.
This
So
I'm
man
sorry,
is correct.
I can't hear you. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I know you can
Yeah.
because you talk over people.
No,
But the
I'm not
thing with
talking
it
over you.
is,
Somebody else is.
okay, go ahead. But what I'm saying is, I didn't, I wasn't raised Orthodox. I converted later in life. I
From
was
what?
Mandarin
atheist,
Dharma.
just like you, Nick. That I didn't believe any religion
I
was
never
true. I
said I
thought
was
they were
an
all
atheist.
myths.
They
Hold
must
on.
learn the
I never
Dharma.
said I was an atheist. That's another bit of
Well, you
hubris
make
on your.
atheistic arguments. Who
Well,
cares,
that's
what you
another
are?
bit of hubris and pride on your part that you assume that everybody who doesn't agree with you must be an atheist.
You
You
know
know who
what's
had pride and
what's the
hubris?
biggest
Lucifer.
hubris about your situation here is that you won't even
Lucifer
accept the
had pride and hubris.
possibility that
Yeah.
this could be true.
No, I obviously I'm a scientist. I accept possibilities. I look for
Oh, you're a
reasons for
scientist, so you take
possibilities.
philosophy and science and you combine them together and you say this is a fact
Lucifer.
Well,
as a means to rule
science
out
is a
other
philosophy.
ideas.
No, science is a philosophy. And yeah,
Yeah, I know.
we look
Science
for
and philosophy
evidence
has
that
been
leads us
combined in the
to a
modern world.
conclusion, which leads us to a
So
conclusion.
let's talk about evolution, Nick. So
Yeah.
why
I
do
mean,
you
think about
believe in
that.
evolution?
Well, I'm not a biologist, so. But
Science
Do
I
you
mean,
believe in
let's think about
evolution?
this. I mean,
I like science.
if God made all these great things, wouldn't He want us to study them?
I think
It's
science
the
and
issue.
religion need to come
Christianity
together.
isn't against science as long as
No,
science doesn't,
Christianity is not against science. I
No,
never said that.
no, it's
nope.
not. But
No, I never said it was. I
it
agree.
becomes an issue when science tries to override divine revelation and say that this isn't a possibility. The scriptures aren't what's wrong. Science is. All right.
Well, so you're saying that people can rise from the dead? Science is wrong. That doesn't actually
Of
Absolutely.
happen.
course.
People can rise from the dead because
Of course they
And
can.
I'll
the
give you an
evidence.
example. I'll give
Of
you an
course
Give
they
me an
example
can.
of
example.
this. I'll give you an example of this. There's a monastery we're at, right? I'm a monk, Nick, okay?
Yes, I know
And the elder Theodore that lived here in Europe, he raised the dead. He did.
that.
And there's documents of this, and thousands of people seen him do it.
So why isn't this general
But you
knowledge
wouldn't
among the
believe it.
masses? No. Well, I'm asking you.
Why
Let's
isn't it
say,
on the news?
yeah. Why isn't it on the news? Why haven't the ability to raise the dead been somehow
Because the globalists.
like? Why can't there are
Because you
plenty of
haven't
people
heard
I'd.
of it. Another fallacy, Nick. You're a
Because they're
terrible
turning the frogs
scientist.
gay.
Well, I mean, you don't understand evolution because you haven't quote
Oh, I
heard of
don't
it.
understand evolution, which is based on,
Resurrection
older rocks being on the bottom or like fossils
Because
being on
they
the
can
bottom
turn
when
the
they could
frogs
be on the
gay.
top as well. And the
That's
theory is that,
The
okay.
so
monkeys.
evolution is
Okay,
true because
I got
we
to stop you right
say
there.
it's true
I
because
got to
The
these
stop you
gay
right there.
rocks on the
monkeys.
bottom.
Rocks is geology.
The
We're talking
monkeys are
about
gay.
evolution.
Yes, but that's how they distinguish the time period.
The
They say,
monkeys
That's
are
well,
gay.
these rocks on
yeah.
the
That has
bottom
nothing to do with
it's
evolution. So
the
there you
the
go.
That's where
You
he
earth
don't.
came
gets
from.
old and it
So
takes this
so
amount of
Gay
so
time,
monkeys.
Nick.
you. So my initial
You're
statement is
not a
correct.
doctor. You're an asshole, man. You like to talk over people. It's sickening.
No, because I asked you. You said you knew
Gay green
something about
monkeys.
evolution, and you don't. You don't know anything
noise.
about
I do
evolution,
know
and you
something about
compare.
it.
You
Why are
just
you
started
telling
talking
me what
about
I don't know?
geology.
Because you think
Gay
a
green
Christian doesn't
monkeys.
know things.
Well, oh wait, does that annoy you when I assume things about you?
Alright, yeah, no.
does it? Just like you assumed as an atheist. But generally, when we talk about evolution, we don't start with rocks. We don't start. I'm not a biologist, but I know
rocks, why
that
am I
much.
talking about
I'm a
rocks?
mythicist.
Because we're talking
I don't
about
know.
the
Why are
time
you talking
period
about
of the
rocks?
Earth.
What does time period have to do with
Everything starts
evolution?
with start. We're all
Because you
stardust.
say that it would have taken a specific amount of time
You know what
for
I'm
it to be
saying?
true,
Keep
correct?
moving.
I don't believe in this.
I don't say that.
The
That's not what
evolutionists
evolution
say
is.
that. So you don't even know what
That's
evolution
no,
is.
that's not what evolution is.
Yes, they
I don't
do. They say that,
believe
you
in
know, the
I-
bottom
that's
rocks had to be older in order for the
No,
Earth to
they
be
don't.
millions of
That's
years old.
that's geology.
that is a whole no.
But
Oh my
it's a
God.
basis for the
Okay.
evolutionary
That is
idea.
not
or
I
how long
think
it
I've
took.
proven my point. You don't know what the hell you're talking about.
Yeah.
It took this
Oh.
specific period of
It has
time, and they
nothing
used
to
the
do with
rocks to
rocks.
distinguish
It's
that
nothing
period
to
of
do with
time for
rocks.
evolution.
Just like
The
the Big Bang has
geological
nothing to do with
practice of
evolution.
developed those of there.
Okay,
He does know
you know
what
what?
he's
I'll bite. I'll bite. I'll bite. Tell me about rocks and evolution. I'll bite.
Rocks.
Tell me about the rocks.
Rock and roll, man.
No, you're not respectful, man.
You know, I'll agree with that. I'll agree with that. And I'll agree that science, we're very bad at behaving. We tend to shout down people and just call them stupid for saying stupid things. We shouldn't do that. I will 100% admit that
You know
sometimes
what,
I do
Nick?
that.
The wisdom of the world is foolishness to God, and there's going to be a day that you find out.
You know, I
when you're on
respect
your
you
knees
for that.
bowing to God yourself. When you bow to God yourself,
There's going to be a
how
day.
stupid what I said is.
So now your pride is showing. You're going to see one day I'm going to be right.
No. I actually respect you for that, Nick.
I do too.
I actually respect you for that.
Yeah, I'm sure you demon worshippers would.
Yeah, well.
You know what? I really wish I was a demon. That'd be cool. I want wings.
You are, man.
I want wings and those big claws. I want to be a gargoyle.
You are. If you don't worship their god, you're automatically a demon. So, welcome to the club.
Well, I consider myself an angel. The rest of them, they're all demons. Monks are demons.
Well, I mean, demons are like fallen angels, so, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not an atheist, but remember, I worship Prometheus, so.
Right, and Prometheus is
which another name for Satan.
Right,
so
yeah.
Base the timeline of the world based on a theory that the rocks are the lowest are the older, and that those on the top.
Yeah. The rock was created on the second day.
They say it's true
No,
because evolution is.
I'm serious.
So it's a theory inside of it.
Prometheus was actually chained to a rock. So, yeah, Prometheus, the rock is the devil. So
why is it every time you occult types come on the show, no one has any respect for each other? They just talk about
Prometheus.
You derail,
Prometheus is Lucifer.
You control, you like try to
Prometheus.
get a negative reaction. It's misery, man. Every
Prometheus
single
is the
time.
devil. So, no Prometheus.
Actually, I'm serious about. I want to understand why you believe. Like, who told you? Maybe I can help clarify some science about evolution and rocks. Like, I mean, we're here to learn. Like, why do you believe evolution is about rocks?
I'm with you on that one, Nick.
I didn't say anything about evolution being about rocks. What I said is that in order to prove their theory, they have to start with a theory. So they base the timeline of the world based on a theory that the rocks that are the lowest are the oldest, and those on top that are the newer rocks. But it's saying true. If evolution is true, so it's a theory inside of a theory.
Okay,
they
so
even acknowledge they aren't certain that the lowest rocks are the oldest. They make the assumption to prove their theory of evolution. The truth is sometimes
Jackson,
the
the
oldest
back.
rocks are on top and the newer ones are on the bottom. Completely disorganized. It's not as black and white as they say.
Yeah.
Hey guys, I know we're having fun fighting, but I have a suggestion.
Not really.
I seem to understand what Unseen is saying. Evolution they do say it takes a long time, but
I think evolution is bullshit. Personally,
I think you're confusing the age of the Earth as something to do with evolution. Yes, evolution takes a long time, but it has nothing to do with.
So you're telling me a time period doesn't have anything to do with
what we call the geological timeline. Those are two
Hi
different
guys,
things.
hello. I have a suggestion.
Dr.
David Patrick Carey has a open panel, and I think that we should do a raid over there and see what happens.
Yeah.
That's my personal opinion.
Just kick the door in.
Link.
And just
it's in the back. I think it would be very fruitful I think it would be very fruitful.
I love you, Neuro.
Yeah, the fruit is evil. The fruit is of the devil.
I mean, I think if we're gonna attempt that, we should go in one at a time. Maybe
Stay away from the fruit.
Well,
The
I
fruit
think
the fruit is evil.
whoever wants to go first. Well, I guess Nick just went, but we'll see how it goes. But
Oh, is
Well, it's
Nick?
usually the woman.
Well, let
She
me
was the
let me
first to
see if he
sin.
actually shows up over there, because that'd actually be pretty funny.
No, he's
And then-
I
definitely
think
a man.
evolution. I think evolution is bullshit.
but
I
I
do.
think that Unseen or Machine should go first. I mean, I'm willing to go, but I've talked to these guys
I
many times.
definitely
And
shouldn't go first. I don't know what you're
yeah,
smoking.
I don't want to go. I don't mind going, but I don't have much to say to them. But I think that
I'm in a good mood.
I think Unseen would probably do well, or Twilight. But you got to realize they're all Orthodox Christian guys.
I'm in a good mood today, so I'm just kind of chilling.
Tell me
having
what
fun.
to do, Dad. They're gonna hate me. I'm sorry. Just gonna
I'm
do it
glad
by
you're.
the-
I'm glad you're here, Zephyr, because I'm in a good mood.
I love them though. I love all of you.
It's good to see. I love you too.
Let me try to see what this is.
It's good to see you.
Even the
Church.
difficult ones. Because I'm
Even though
difficult.
you're a woman and you cursed us all to hell
I don't do that.
because you obeyed the serpent, so it's all your fault.
I don't even know the serpent. What the fuck?
It's all your fault. Yeah.
You can blame me. I'm just gonna blame.
Oh, Nick's over there. Actually,
I'm
by the way.
obviously
All right,
kidding.
let's see what happens. That'd be kind of
I
fun.
work
It'd be
with
kind of fun to see.
I work with Lilith. Obviously, I'm joking.
But Unseen,
Yes,
if you're willing to go, I think it would be worth a like if you never talked to David Patrick Harry, I think it would be worth your time.
Doubt it.
But that's what I'm hearing.
Why? Why are you so
So I have no
doubting?
opinion
You're
as
so
of yet.
mean
I was just
sometimes.
listening.
Oh well, this is an open panel. The stream's already been rated. Everybody's in the chat.
Yeah,
we're
we're
talking
gonna
about the
we're
woke right,
gonna
American
totally rate it.
culture, Trump administration, Kanye, all that different
Oh
stuff.
God.
So who's going in next?
On the woke right.
Trump is Zionist. Chill.
I personally think we should send Lilith in next. Firecracker. Lilith, you go in, dude. Please go in.
That would be
You're so
awesome, I have to
confident.
admit.
Say,
You got a lot of energy right now.
Yeah, Trump is
I haven't heard that term before.
Trump is
Yeah,
pretending to fight Zelensky.
Roscoe Duck, welcome, brother.
You see the link in the back there, Lilith?
Hey, you have any thoughts on the topic today?
What's the topic today?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's any surprise that
I think it's nonsense.
Trump shills are now advocating for anti-Semites to be.
Yeah, I think Elon Musk is a liar.
Well, Twilight, you should go give him your opinion on Trump because I think it would be very interesting.
What
your
exactly
opinion on it.
is the topic though? I didn't know that.
The woke right and Trump and the alt right and white nationalism and
And Kanye West, it says too.
He's a Nazi. Yeah, he's a Nazi white supremacist.
To visit Israel despite being invited. And some of the rhetoric, I mean, it was still, I listened to the big
All right, well,
speech
let me listen for a minute, get an idea of what they're talking about.
It's kind of the same old rigmarole.
So I best know my attack. You understand? Yeah. I'm like a serpent, you know.
Yeah, this is fine. Yeah, let me turn this up and.
No, this is fun. I missed you guys.
Like he's very much.
I've had so much
no
going
war
on.
with Iran and a sort of more of a capitalistic approach to a
Yeah,
the Middle East as opposed to like nation building.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people, at least many on the right and in the Trump MAGA circles, viewed this as potentially a shift between the dynamics with the U.S. and Israel, although that has nothing to do with the U.S.-Israel lobby and the Adelson money and all the stuff that Jose was talking about how the Trump administration is already compromised in certain ways.
Yeah.
Well, you know, he's doing a whisper campaign. If he was really this boisterous person that he wants his fans think that he is, then he would come out of the gates and say it outright that he's protesting Israel's policy. But currently, if I'm not mistaken, America's foreign policy with the Iran negotiations is the exact same thing as Israel's. They want to dismantle the nuclear program, and Israel's never going to get on board with it. If it comes down to it, maybe Israel does a false flag event and directly bombs the nuclear facilities. I think that's even in line with what some of the saints would say. Like one day you'll be sipping
Nick Volt's trying to get in
coffee,
there.
and then
He's like,
the
no, we
next
gotta
second
save
you'll
Israel.
see
So
Israel
We're
has
gonna ride
destroyed Iran's
Israel's-
nuclear facilities.
Yeah.
Right.
So perhaps it's not going to be America initiating this. It's going to be Israel, like they always have been doing,
Make
creating
Israel great
issues,
again.
and America gets involved.
And
Make
that's
Israel great
very
again.
much a possibility. I don't see Israel going to war with Iran without knowing they have the support of the U.S.
Gonna blame Hamas.
I was going to mention, Roscoe, this is why, though I'm half Colombian, I'm never drinking coffee, because, you know, if I never sip the coffee, then obviously the prophecy can't happen.
I think a little bit
What?
of the rift between Trump and Israel, you know, which the news doesn't report. I mean, you got to read between the lines. The Signal chat, which happened where they were talking about classified material and classified intelligence on the silly Signal app, I think really made Israel angry, because a lot of that intelligence comes from Israel. And when we give intelligence to foreign nations, it's predicated on that, you know, they protect that information and treat it as it should be treated. And ever since that happened, we saw this sort of rift between Trump and Netanyahu. And even, I mean, remember when Trump said, okay, we're not going to bomb the Houthis anymore. Probably a lot of that had to do with Israel not sharing their intelligence about them anymore.
Well, the rumor is the rift really came when Trump discovered that Mike Waltz was communicating secretly with Netanyahu to, according to the messages, Mike Waltz was trying to entice people around Trump to be more in favor of the war with Iran. And when Trump found out about that, obviously he demoted him to like the representative of the UN or something. But apparently Trump and Netanyahu now are quite at odds, because Trump feels that Netanyahu is trying to subvert his presidency through people in his administration. But it's Trump that hired these Zionists, and it's Trump that's, you know, kind of bought and paid for by Zionist money.
Yeah.
You know what's interesting about Trump? Like, he has this caricature of, like, you know, him holding guns and this and that. But based on the way he's acted in his second term, and even in his first term, he's really scared of war. Like, he's not a warmonger.
No.
And I'm curious as to why he's like that.
I think he's a builder.
Terrified.
He likes to build buildings. He likes to make money. So he's more of a capitalist than a neocon.
A Freemason
True,
almost.
but I mean,
A
war is
builder.
good for capitalists.
But he doesn't. He's not a neocon,
like
so he
Bob
doesn't
Builder.
want an economic system that makes money off war.
And he's not invested
Freemason,
in the
the
right
builder.
stack to make money off of war. He's not invested like a chain, for example, where their money was parked. His stuff is really just building tall buildings in the U.S. Like that's where his money is. And even if you look at which Jewish faction that his family married into, that's what the Kushners. That's their source of power as well. It's real estate. So that's why, you know, I don't see real estate reform happening during a Trump administration, because that would directly harm his bottom line, as well as the factions that his own family is intermarried with. But you know, that's what I find to be interesting, because the break between Netanyahu and Trump is very personal. He doesn't have like animosity towards Israel itself, and he's not against the Israeli project as a whole.
No,
it's more personal vendetta with this one guy who backstabbed him.
Probably supports Israel.
And he is in bed with certain factions within the Jewish power structure. And the fact is, as much as the whole idea of you know, Jews have this.
So Lilith, if you're not going in, I gotta go in. I mean, you know, we got a show to do here.
They're making sense.
So
far. Be here.
If you look, I'm not going to. Okay. How do I avoid TDS? If you
Okay,
look
I'm
at
going in. You going in,
in the 30s and 40s?
Okay, well, you go in.
A lot of Jewish Ashkenazi factions were at each other's
They're
throats.
not like
Some may have
Israel
wanted to
shit, so I thought they were going to dodge it.
In
I was
political
like,
action that resulted in their.
But they're talking about it, so I'm like, okay.
Eventually,
Huh?
I said I will follow along. Eventually, I'm gonna watch too. So
Yeah,
I'll show up. Wow, it's so quiet. It's nice.
When they silence the demons, it's very quiet.
Oh wait, have I been muted this whole time?
the demons are okay.
Oh yeah,
Not the
Unseen,
whole
are you going in?
The demons are not meant to be exercised. They're meant to.
Yeah, I'll go over there real quick. I'll be right back.
All right, for sure. Me and Unseen are going in. I'm going to share the screen over here.
They're meant to exercise, like they need air and.
Okay, so you guys got to.
Sunlight. You know,
We're gonna comment on the commentary.
yeah, we need to
Yeah.
comment on the commentary. We're gonna share and the sharing and carrying and the carrying.
Yeah,
Yeah.
let's see what happens.
Make fun of each other because that's what
Lots,
people
lots
do.
of snacks. You know, lessons.
All right,
You guys are-
but please keep it down because I can actually hear you guys, so I will be having
This
to
is
listen to them
hardcore
and you
heavy
guys. Right?
truther. Yes.
So
Truther Max.
so
Yes.
let's see what happens. Oh wait, I can't find the link now. Who's got the link?
Yes.
I can probably give it back to you.
I don't know who the fuck these people are, but
They're
You
they're
got the
Jay
link?
Dyer's best. They're Jay Dyer's butt buddies.
oh,
You
oh,
got the-
okay.
Oh, the link is over here. Okay, I got it. Yep.
He's the best.
At the top
And
of the
Andrew
chat.
Wilson.
He's a real stand-up
Pineapple.
guy.
Oh,
They're
sorry.
they're Andrew Wilson's
Great.
best friends essentially.
Yeah. The Christian bitch. Yeah.
Flo was on there yesterday or the other day, not yesterday, but Flo was he supposedly I commented on it on the video that he did where he supposedly got owned by these guys. But
Yeah.
Who got owned? Flow State?
yeah.
They're cucks.
He
They
disagreed.
made a video about him getting owned.
Yes.
Somebody did. Yeah. It was on his channel, so I'm assuming it was
The
him.
machine lies is in living color.
We know the playing field by the protocols of the elders alone.
I have a response for that one actually. So the NFL games are rigged, and people still watch them because it's fun to watch. So it really is that simple. It's not a what do you call it? That's why, like, I don't fault people who watch American football. It's like, but what drives me nuts is the fact that people bet on American football, and you have that one. What's the name of that Jewish guy who runs the betting on the largest betting platform?
Oh, on FanDuel?
Yeah.
I know who you're talking about. I forget.
Yeah, but it's just amazing to me that of all the sports to bet on, people would bet on American football because like it's been openly known to be rigged for like 40 something years. This is not like a secret thing that they put the thumbs on the scales. So it's like I'll just say, like, if you're betting in a sport where there actually is no fixing, like, okay, at least you're actually like trying to get alpha on people. Like, okay, if you take it seriously, like I had a cousin who actually would drill into the stats, data, etc., to make money off of essentially, as he put it, it's not really gambling at this point. You're doing options trading on baseball performance or baseball teams,
Right?
Which he was, and he was making money. So it's like at that point, it's not really gambling. He's playing poker and he knows what he's doing. But it's when you're betting on something where it's rigged, like, really, I just find it it just boggles my mind that people do that.
Right. Welcome, the Machine Lies and Unseen Warfare.
Yeah, blessings. Yeah, thank you for having us.
God bless both you guys. You guys have any thoughts on the topic?
Okay,
Oh,
so
yeah.
what is the topic exactly?
The woke right.
The woke right. I put in
and-
Kanye West, American culture, what's happening politically in the
Kanye.
Trump administration.
Yeah, I don't know, just like looking at the way things are going, it seems like, people are getting funneled into certain ideas to push them somewhere else, like these false dialectics.
Yes.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think the whole idea that James Lindsay is not a liberal himself, being a classical liberal, classical liberalism is basically the roots of liberalism itself, right? So
Right.
I think that, he's not very distant. I mean, he still has the same ideological foundations as a liberal, right? So I think that
he's very much he's much more left than some of the classical liberals of England. They might be considered woke right according to him.
Yeah, I think.
So-
I like to quote Jacques Ellul. Who said that basically liberalism is on his deathbed, and basically technology is his executioner. Basically the technological system does everything that liberalism hopes to accomplish. So it's basically liberalism without the ideology. So that's kind of my take on the whole thing. Is that these guys support technological progress. They support modernism. So they're basically closet liberals, in a sense,
Well, I think they would absolutely say that they're liberals. I mean, in the conversation with Jordan Peterson and James Lindsay, they identify as classical liberals. And for them, that's kind of the Burkean school of conservatism or something like that, even though, again, he's he's much more interested in historical identity and ancestry than either one of these guys would be. So it does feel like to me, and maybe you guys disagree, transhumanism is the end result of modernity and classical liberalism.
I would agree with that. I think it's all like kind of bottled up in the idealism of the age, you know.
Right.
Everybody sort of has this chiliastic idea of the purpose of man, and it's all
Right.
heading one way or another to a utopia, you know, and that's
Right.
antichrist in nature, really.
Well, utopia is part of modernity, right? So
Right.
modernity is built on a few principles, and the foundation is what they call linear progress. That from the Enlightenment forward, we would experience linear progress through knowledge, i.e.,
Yeah.
science, through a better state of living, through technology, and that this would be brought about in political systems by democracy, and that we would all eventually live in sort of a global utopia.
Yeah, and that's the thing that's supported on the right and the left. So
Exactly.
I think that in there's a huge point, but the fact is that he's saying that there's an extremity behind it, and there's this dark triadic force, and then he's pathologizing these behaviors, which itself
Right.
seems to be kind of, you know, a sort of leftist tendency itself, you know.
Exactly. No, it's so ironic. That's a great point, because in their conversation, they're talking about how these people are Machiavellian, narcissists,
Right.
sociopaths, psychopaths, and that they just, label people and sort of see beyond their individual. And then they describe all these people doing the exact same thing that they say they do. I
Yeah,
mean,
it's kind of taking the, it's missing the fact that every man is created by God and putting that on the back burner, and then, pushing people in these little boxes into their idealistic, thing or whatever. It's kind of, it depersonalizes people in some way, I don't know. Crazy.
Yeah, and two things I say on my show is that, basically the foundations of classical liberalism, like you said, DPH is basically based on, two ideas of reason, mastery over nature, the idea of individuality and equality and all that type of stuff, and using reason and knowledge to master nature in the sense of linear progress. And I think these two can be summed up in 2 points, that I often make on my show is that there's one, the idea of compartmentalization of knowledge, and two, the idea of the pseudo eschatology of the myth of progress. And I think both of these are detrimental to obviously human flourishing, but obviously mostly to the notion of traditions, all notions of traditions,
right. Which is my point, and Jose and I were talking about that. If you reject the underlying narrative of modernity, where do you go? Modernity includes fascism, Marxism, all these ideas are part of modernity. So you either become a postmodernist, which is what they're labeling as the radical left, which they are, subjectivist, relativist that want to just undermine all institutional hierarchy. That's what they are, and fair enough, and that certainly is a threat to classical liberalism and modernity. But what I feel like what they're labeling the woke right is what Jose talked about as like a vertical identity through history. And that's where we're seeing all this paganism, orthodoxy, trad Catholicism, stoicism, these old worldviews, these older paradigms that are pre-modern. And it's like an escape for young men, is that they see the hell of modernity. The myth of linear progress isn't true. None of us, can afford a house. This whole idea that the world is going to continue to get better, and every generation was going to experience the benefits, not true. It's failed. So you either become a postmodernist, where you're a radical, subjectivist, relativist, or it's like you escape modernity by going back to some type of pre-modern worldview that allows for objective truth through its metaphysics and values subjective experience. Orthodoxy in particular values theosis, which is subjective relationship with God. So it's like, I feel like these are the only options, and this is this crisis that we're facing. And the MAGA movement, to the point you guys were making, is it is classical liberal centrism, taking the sort of centrist right and the centrist left, including them into the MAGA movement, and you have the technocrats. So the end point of modernity is transhumanism. You have the technocrats making sure this project continues, and then you have Zionism, which is part of the post-World War II narrative and consensus, which we haven't got into yet, to make sure that that is protected. And it feels like that's really what we're looking at when we look at the Trump administration. And it's not that there aren't policies that I agree with, but at a larger paradigmatic level of culture and what's going on, I see that as being the underlying phenomenon.
Yeah, you know, and like a biblical take, it's almost like a, you know, the growing code of love and the lawlessness. Like it's like some phenomenon that's going on that's, you know, pushing people people have been pushed away from like a monarchy with a great Orthodox leader or something like that, where the chief goal of society was to uphold good and justice, you know, and
Right.
now the only focus is on throwing the rock the farthest and not thinking of the hedge you crack along the way. You know, it kind of shifts man's focus, and then saying there's no real absolute truth. So, you know, God's impersonal, he doesn't matter anymore. You know, we just go on Sundays to church or something, and we can, you know, we can have our God on Sunday, and then, you know, everything else is just politics. And people are getting, I mean, I think that's why people are so depressed and see the hang up. And it's not a rebellion. You know, a lot of people think that's a rebellion to go to the leftist route or the woke route or even the right route. It's like, is it really a rebellion if everybody's going the same direction? I don't think so, you know. You know.
Yeah, I got something to say.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so part of this transhumanist project is the negation of all human categories like natural hierarchy, sex, but even race. And I think that the sort of new right, the new Trumpist MAGA right, even serves the purpose of transhumanism, in that it's now trying to further negate the category of race by calling those people the pejorative of woke, right?
Well, I wouldn't say the Trump administration is behind woke right. I would say they're probably part and parcel of the same paradigm.
No, I'm saying that the MAGA movement is accusing people on the fringe right, on the racial right, of being woke right. So it serves that purpose, and I think that's probably one of the reasons.
I see
why
what you're
Elon
saying.
Musk- Yeah.
It does kind of like it's the same thing. It's like makes a human being not a human being and just their ideology, you know. And that's not what they are.
To the other point I wanted to make, I was reading a book by a guy. He's a Spenglerian philosopher named Francis Yockey. I was reading his book, and he makes mention of the fact that monarchism was to the 19th century what communism was to the 20th century, and that it was the total abolition of monarchies, and then communism comes in, abolishes the monarchies of Eastern Europe, and now we're on the route to sort of transhumanism, which is the negation of that prior negation of tradition itself, right? And you know, I think in that sense, these are two sides of the same coin. Communism and liberalism, in the same way that Trumpism and the sort of leftism are basically the same thing. They're accusing the same far right actors of being bigoted and adhering to identity politics. And identity is fundamental to the constitution of, you know, people. We need identity. And
well, in the modernist project, I mean, we are like widgets. Right. So individualism per se, and this was Jose's point earlier, is that it's already sort of atomized the human person. And so I personally, I agree with a significant portion of what you just said. I would say that postmodernism is not the exact same thing as the modernist project. But to your point about the classical liberal sort of false dynamic dichotomy between the left and right, yeah, that's absolutely the case. I totally agree with that. But I you know, and that's where I feel like the riff in the right wing has to do with rejection of modernity, but I don't think it's conscious by a lot of people. So I don't think when the tradcasts are memeing about the Crusades are conscious that they're really representing a pre-modern worldview in opposition to modernity itself.
No, it's definitely unconscious. That's something, you know, I've mentioned this before, I think a couple of years ago, but you see that in Anglo-Saxon fiction. Like, you know, there's a reason why the title is Return of the King, not Return of the President. So it's you see that in all the literature everywhere. Even the most people I know who are the most diehard founding fathers or British British even the few British liberals I know. I look at what they actually read in terms of fiction. Like you realize that everything you read is just your subconscious longing for a monarch or longing for a strong father figure for something as well. It just amazes me. It's how much, what do you call it? When you have fiction that focuses on democracy, and republics tend not to do so well, and people tend not to like as much. Just look at the Star Wars prequel trilogy. So that's
Right.
what do you call it? I'm just saying republics are not that exciting in terms of they don't excite the mind or the human soul in storytelling the way that the way that a kingdom does.
Right.
And they're not aimed at for the human soul for this that because theosis was a part of the monarchy. It's like the monarch was to push people to a better understanding of themselves through orthodoxy in some sense and become a higher person through reaching out to God, like communion with God in some sense. It was worried about the soul, and we don't see that. It's just kind of the limbs controlling the head. It doesn't work.
Right. Well, and I would argue that, to Roscoe's point earlier, when he was talking about Marxism and liberalism being two sides of the same coin, all that is encapsulated. When I say modernity, all of those ideologies are included, including fascism, including democratic republics or pure democracies. All of this is part of the modernist project, and this is a new way to envision the construction of nations and the formations of peoples. That I think the average person is disgruntled with democracy, even though they would probably be unwilling to say that they don't want it anymore.
Yeah, if you look at, if you actually look at Hobbes' Leviathan, he actually says, in his discussion of the Commonwealth, that the sovereign will be an artificial, the artificial man, who is sovereign will be a god among men.
Yes.
So he literally
Superman.
says, that the artificial man is like God. Which if you look at the concept of artificial man, it's not a real person. It's a collective, right? So he created the notion of a state as an individual sovereign, right? As an entity or a commonwealth, right? And then he called it God. And then if you look at John Locke in the Two Treatises of Government, he actually says the wise prince, I think in section 42 of the second treatise, he actually says that the wise prince who enlarges the wealth of his neighbors is going to be like a mortal god. So there you have in proto-capitalism and in the notion of the government by consent, they slip in this notion that the artificial man is like a god, and I think that is
well, and that artificial man narrative is it really comes out of the Baconian tradition. So Francis Bacon setting the standard in his utopian treatises like the New Atlantis, where he believed that science and technology was going to create a man that was, for him, it was Adam. It was a return back to the garden, and Adam for him had pure knowledge. And so what science and technology is doing, science is giving us the knowledge, technology is giving us the abilities that Adam had before the fall.
Yeah, and what's really weird about that is that he's hijacking the notion from Corinthians of the second Adam. From Romans 4
and they're not
the
seeing
second Adam, right? Yeah.
And they're not seeing the second Adam as Christ. They're venerating Adam, the first Adam. So the entire techno-millenarian tradition is idolizing Adam before the fall, whereas orthodoxy and true Christianity is focused on the second Adam, Christ. We're really there's no interest in becoming Adam or before,
which is a higher state than Adam was in. It's like that's what we're attaining to. It's like Adam was near close to that state. But, as Christ was like moving through walls and different things, it's like that shows us, or like a clairvoyant elder can see the past, the future, and the present all at once. Like that kind of shows us what that would be like. But they're taking it too rationalistic. They don't see that that's, just having knowledge and farsight, or, it's not the same.
Is this like the spiritual and our bodies are reaching a higher level in some way? That's what the saints are talking about.
Mm-hmm. So my next, we can move from the woke right. I'm curious what your guys' thoughts are on the conversation regarding the post World War II consensus. And so this really got going after Daryl Cooper. He was on the Tucker Carlson podcast or show, or however you want to do interview with Tucker Carlson, where he is trying to humanize. So his work is very attempted to be very objective and come from both sides. And he did a thing on World War II where he's trying to humanize the Nazis and demonstrate like how, if you were a German in that period, why it's not unfathomable that you would support the Third Reich. And he levied criticism at Churchill regarding World War II. And this was a huge kerfuffle online. Everybody, how could you criticize Churchill? And I feel like what we're seeing with Kanye West, and I ask anybody who comments, don't say any words that could violate TOS.
Gotcha.
But with Kanye West's new song, with what, the shifting of the Overton window, with, as we said, the woke right, and really the woke right being a sort of pre-modern grouping of young men that are trying to find identity, meaning, and truth outside of the modernist project. It's like, it really does feel like the post-World War II consensus is falling apart, and that there is a reshifting of nations. There is a reshifting of young people and how they view the world in various nations. What are your guys' thoughts on that? Do you see the post-World War II consensus falling apart, or what are your guys' thoughts?
Yeah, I have some thoughts. This is a great book on the whole World War II narrative. Yeah, I read that in a book club with some people at my church, and it was very.
I've actually never read that. I'm aware of it. I've actually never read that book.
Yeah, I mean, you just see time after time. I mean, the Nat Sox, they were pretty justified in the beginning before 1939 in their annexation of Austria, of Prussia, and of the Sudetenland in Czechoslovakia. They were justified in all of that because there was oppressive structures, especially in Czechoslovakia, on the Germans. Like, they couldn't participate in the government at all because it was a polyglot nation. It wasn't primarily German. They couldn't obtain even one seat, and I think it was a parliamentarian system they had at the time. So they had no voice, and they were constantly being exploited. So, I mean, it's easy to see why, if you're a dog that's just getting beat and then beaten, why you would eventually just snap out and try conquering the entire region. And if I'm not mistaken, from the reading that I've done on the subject, Adolf's plan was to stop in Ukraine because he wanted to make sure that the Allies couldn't starve out Germany like they did with the starvation blockades during the First World War.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you look at it through that lens, you can actually understand like why he was doing what he was trying to do, and even some of the propaganda that the Nat Sox had at the time, it's come into fruition. Like, there's this one poster that they had of a French lady in a zoo enclosure, surrounded by the new citizens of France who are all not French. They're all foreigners.
Right.
So, I mean, it's almost like a prophetic movement that predicted everything that we're going through right now. And I think that does contribute to the breaking down of the World War II consensus, is the fact that, in many ways, they weren't perfect, but they were prophetic.
Right.
Can we say the Z word? I wonder if we could say Zion.
I feel like you can, because of, I mean, I've been watching other YouTube videos. It seems like some big channels are saying the word.
So I mean, in terms of that, I think there's a considerable narrative at play. I think on the right, you're told to be neutral in support. Not support or defect from, Zionism. The right is told to stay neutral on Zionism from what I've seen, and even in some of the most extremist, segments. And then if you look at the left, they seem to be totally, in support of one side, right? And both sides are obviously funded heavily by the Zionists. So I think that it's pretty obvious what the play here is. If they're going to change the narrative, they're trying to funnel people into those groups, so that they can collect information on them. So if you're, voicing opinions online one way or another, I think is to funnel people into certain groups, so that they can tag them, and sort of, I think they're, figuring out what type of narratives they want to play at this time, because there's, obviously a considerable amount of the, of the wingnut groups are funded by, like some pretty well-known organizations. So, like the Council for National Policy and all these people.
I got something that might be interesting. It's from Father Seraphim Rose's letters, letter 50 from June 1st, 14th, 1970. So he talks about H. He says, I'll just call it H. We know who H is. So H, by the way, was a most interesting apocalyptic phenomenon. Besides his insane jealousy for the Jays, he led them to destroy them so that the Germans could be the, quote, chosen race. And he, the Messiah, I even recall, though I cannot find the source, that he once said that if he couldn't be the Messiah, then he would willingly be Antichrist. He himself basically was a Bolshevik with an idol worship of Lenin and communist techniques, who saw the 20th century world history as a battle between his national Bolshevism and Soviet international Bolshevism. And when he saw that the end of his hopes gave his political inheritance to the Soviets in the words, quote, the future belongs to the stronger Eastern power nation. In the last days of the war, I don't know if I can say this, but his party, this, National Socialists or whatever, organized werewolves who took their inspiration from positively, quote, mystical broadcast of Goebbels to the effect that since the war was lost, Germany and Europe must be positively destroyed so that the new order of the future could be built on the total ruin and ashes of everything man had hitherto valued and built. Okay, so he says Hitlerism, I don't know if I can say that, sorry, but in short, is only the handmaid of communism, which in turn points to the, quote, mystical pinnacle of modern times, Antichrist. Mm-hmm. H, also, while anti-monarchists kept the crown and the scepter of the Holy Roman Empire, just in case the time should change, a monarch should be undemanded. And once he said, if the monks of Mount Athos should ever sign a document giving them the inheritance of the Eastern Empire, by all means preserve it. But he goes on, and I think, that's something to kind of look at, is like that false dichotomy there. That I like. It seems to me both sides were sort of agent provocateurs for the same cause. Now, I don't know if he was completely aware of it, but maybe on a spiritual level, they're both working for Antichrist in a sense. So that's what I see, and I think that's what he's kind of getting at here. And I think we're seeing that same spirit within the world today.
Well, actually, we have to remember that Churchill and Stalin were on the same side after all, right? So
true. In fact, Churchill was very supportive of Stalin. Yeah, I to your point, unseen warfare, I would say that, fascism and Marxism are two sides of the same coin regarding socialist approaches to the redefining of nations in the 19th, 20th century. I would also include, in regards to any sort of spiritual framing of the Third Reich, is that Hitler was very much into the occult. And so that's where I kind of break with a lot of these people on the right wing that claim to be Orthodox or Catholic or whatever it may be, that sort of try to Christianize Mean Mr. Mustache Man, because I have a book over on my shelf here that was like his favorite book. It was one of the most important books, and the whole thing is on ritualistic magic, which is a treatise that, and it's a mixture with things that he got from Tibet, looking at East Asia, these tantric traditions. This is why he has a counterclockwise swastika as the logo of the Third Reich. So in that sense, it is filled with an Antichrist spirit. And that's where I think the dumbing down of people to talk about complex issues is that he's either a hero or he's the ultimate villain. And there's
no royal path, there's no mean between the extremes there. It's either you're one, it's either black or white.
Right. And that includes even analyzing somebody like him, where as Roscoe was pointing, even what Patrick Buchanan spoke about, was that there, there is a reason where you can sort of begin to justify or put in a rational, logical category of how things came about. Certainly he crossed the line at some point. And at the same time, then you can bring up all the occultism. And really what I see as a central theme of this Antichrist spirit is the centralization of power outside of a Christian monarchy. Really an Orthodox monarchy. Obviously I'm Orthodox, but what, that's what fascism does. That's what corporatism does. That's what Marxism does. All these things and that's what globalism is about. So all these ideologies that come out of modernity are about the centralization of power that aren't defined by religion or a mandate by God to rule.
Yeah, well, that's the thing is that Hitler believed in progress because he believed in the return of the Atlantean race, which was actually developed by the Thule Society, and by I guess primarily by Lanz von Lebensfels, Dietrich Eckhart. So those guys were definitely occultists. One of them was a former Cistercian monk. That's why they attribute it to the Jesuits or whatever like that. But that's total nonsense, because he then broke off and created like an offshoot of the OTO and the Thule Society, right? So so Hitler he definitely had a bust of Nietzsche, and yeah, he believed in progress, just as just as Churchill and all of them really believed in, so.
Right. Well, it's all modernism. I would say the unique characteristic about the Third Reich is, to Jose's point, is they attempted to have a vertical identity through history, right? So through their concepts of the Aryan race and the ancestral German, they created a sort of mythology of a vertical category of identity that Marxism is totally future oriented. It's about the transcendent of the dialectics. Right, about
where it's like international versus national, it's like,
well, certainly that plays a part, but I would say okay, so Unseen Warfare, you're making that the national is creating a vertical column of identity. Is that what you're saying?
I guess so,
yeah, I could see that. So yeah, Jose, I'm curious what your thoughts are. What are your thoughts about this deconstruction of the post-World War II consensus? Do you see this something that's actually happening? And the criticism of Israel, obviously Israel is the progeny of World War II. What are your thoughts on this consensus narrative falling apart?
Yeah, there are two things at play. One, when an imperial system collapses, its propaganda system is one of the first things that go before the actual political system or the state's ceases to exist. So if one is looking at, for example, the stuff that happened around that white mother up in, what was it, Minnesota?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and then the Kanye West song that comes after, what you're seeing is the taboos of the imperial taboos are essentially being thrown out the window. So taboos are a thing that are a control mechanism in a sense. They're supposed to be, in the original sense, they're supposed to be things, controls to protect people. So I actually knew a missionary to, she was a missionary. She and her husband were missionaries in Papua New Guinea, evangelical missionaries. But they were among a tribe that had this. They had a taboo of you do not sleep underneath that kind of tree ever, or the evil spirits will take your soul. And so she was sitting down. She was thinking she wanted to sleep underneath it and to show that everything would be fine. And then as she, while she was debating whether or not she should do so, one of the branches in the tree fell, collapsing straight where she would have lain down to sleep. And then she realized, oh, okay, this is just a thing to prevent people from getting themselves killed, because that specific kind of tree has a habit of losing branches all the time. So, so that's why, like, in this case, it's an imperial taboo that's meant for thought control, folk control, what can be said, what cannot be said. And so what Kanye West's song has, it's something that Vox Day in his critique of it, and Owen Benjamin pointed out in their critique that they had of it yesterday, that it has no musical merit to it whatsoever. The thing is, what it is, it's more like a jingle than it is like an actual song.
Right.
One verse, one hook, and it's essentially, like da 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 da. It's McDonald's. I'm loving it. That's all it is. It's the jingle. And so essentially, it's not really a song. It's essentially an audible meme that Kanye essentially unleashed, and that's why even though it has no merit musically that should make it an earworm. It is an earworm because it's mimetically strong.
Right. And even regarding the music video, one of the things that at least I thought, maybe I'm just overanalyzing it, but it has a bunch of black men in like bear hats, right?
Mhm.
So it's a very primitive aesthetic, again, which I would think is a movement back towards this like pre-modernism that, again, I think is operating at such an unconscious level in culture. But that's what that aesthetic to me like represented. And then it's the transgression of the imperial boundaries, as you just said.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's the one aspect. The other is, why is it that the old stories aren't working as well? So to put as an example, the like in Russia, the significance of Victory in Europe Day for May 9th is huge. It's still huge among, like even like Russian teenagers I know. And the reason is because, so if you compare it to like the Holocaustianity, the fact is your average person today, like your average 20-year-old doesn't know anyone who, whether they actually did or not, they don't know anyone who lost someone that they knew, in the Holocaust. Whereas when you look at the Russian experience, they lost 27 million people in the war, majority of those being civilians. And so a lot of young people, they have a grandmother or a grandfather who will tell them about their brothers or sisters and uncles, etc., who were killed. They're in that conflict. And so since people don't since your average Zoomer and Gen Alpha have no connection whatsoever, familial or otherwise, to anyone who may have died, in the standard World War II narrative. There's no, you don't get that family bond that would actually seal that narrative, in your mind, the way that the Russian youth today still have.
Yeah, make that narrative part of your identity.
Exactly. So even for example, people talk about Vladimir Putin. He wasn't there, when during the Battle of Leningrad, but he lost an older brother, in that battle. So it's so even though he never knew his brother, all of his older siblings knew said brother. His mother and father knew that brother. So that narrative, even though he was born after those events, it sticks, and the importance of it sticks because it's something that actually happened in your family, in your family tree. The U.S., the American youth, they don't have that, and so that's why it's losing its effect. The only thing they have is mass media, and that's losing its effectiveness, partially because historically, people talk about how can you trust history when history is written by the winners, and the reason you can is because false narratives don't survive time. The longer time goes on, a false narrative will look more and more ridiculous because it'll be out of sync with what's actually happening. So the narrative of the Israelis just want to have peace and live in their own in their own state without foreign interference. That was it was a false narrative that was believable in the 1950s. Today, it's just so departed from reality that people are seeing right in front of them. No one believes it anymore, and that's why the narrative as a whole is being questioned or being rejected at its so that's why what do you call it, when it comes to that's the danger of having lies-based propaganda. When you have lies-based propaganda, or when a state actor chooses to use lies-based propaganda, you run the risk of your descendants and your successors believing those said lies and making policy decisions on those lies, and so your descendants will be doomed to becoming more and more out of touch with reality, which is what you're seeing with the entire ruling class of Britain, of France, of Germany, of the United States. And you can even see this in economic history. So people talk about comparative advantage.
Point. That's
when people talk about comparative advantage, they appeal to David Ricardo for free trade. And I'll give Big Bear credit. Owen Benjamin came up with the phrase Ricardo Retardo, which is mimetically quite strong. If you actually look at David Ricardo's history, David Ricardo himself did not believe in comparative advantage. He invented comparative advantage it was a stated theory as a propaganda piece. He was a member of parliament. He was funded, he had a bunch of guys who funded him to become a member of parliament. And the guys who funded him were set to make a ton of money if the Corn Laws got repealed. So he was just looking to put together a propaganda piece that he could argue in parliament in order to convince enough people so that he could get the Corn Laws repealed so that his backers would make a ton of money and make a profit off of the money they gave him to run. So he didn't believe it himself. And when you actually read Ricardo's arguments for comparative advantage, some things will be more forgivable. Like, for example, one thing his theory assumes is that technology has no impact on productivity. So if you're living in, I don't know, 9th century Spain, I guess you could think that because, but we know for sure today that's totally false. That's an assumption that is simply not met in reality. he also assumes that capital cannot cross borders, which we all know is totally false. Capital flight is a thing. I personally, even not just monetary financial capital, but even physical, like industrial capital. When I was in Pittsburgh, and I remember summer 2012, I watched a bunch of construction crews taking apart a steel foundry, putting it on a train, and they were sending it to the coast to be shipped to China. So that's literally physical capital moving across borders. And David Ricardo's argument assumes that that would never happen. So there are many assumptions that he makes that simply, do not exist in reality.
Well, I think that's one of the Marxist like ideas that that technology changes the system from one of production to one of distribution or something like that. Or so I was reading. But I think I have to break out of here. I'm going to go study some Nietzsche and also Julius Evola and see what their thoughts on modernity are.
Okay.
But I highly recommend 2 books. One is Jacques Ellul, The Technological Society, and the other is The Betrayal of the West, also by Jacques Ellul. And of course, you're always welcome. I'm over at my channel there. Or any of our associated channels there, DPH, to have a discussion about any issues. Obviously, we have more of a sort of argumentative tone. We're also banned, so when we get back up, we'd love to have you. But blessings. I hope you have a nice day, friend.
Thank you, brother. God bless you as well.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Yeah,
of course.
Yeah, peace be with you.
Yeah, and just to finish the point, so the idea is David Ricardo.
Ooh, child, I had to break up out of there. That guy was getting a little bit too wordy there. But yeah, let me share the screen and see what Unseen is doing, and then I'll get into some Nietzsche here. But when we get back,
so that he and his buddies can make a bunch of money. And what ends up happening, people in America as well, and not just Britain, fall for the lie of free trade, and they completely deindustrialize. So that's the great irony of this is the great danger of when one decides to embrace lies. And so in the case of when we're talking about Mean Mr. Mustache Man, when you have the embracement of the occult there, you have the occultic practices going all throughout the SS. Right. And even this, people point out, like, hey, the Mean Mr. Mustache, the Natty Socks opposed the Naughty Socks opposed the sexual degeneracy that was happening in the 1920s. Yet you look at the SA, and they were extremely homosexual. Right. So it's it's kind of like when people were looking at Milo Yiannopoulos as like this, pinnacle of right-wing thought. Like,
yeah, that's a perfect example.
So that's why it's like, William F. Buckley, as mentioned before, he was the controlled opposition. He to Milo's credit, he's not controlled.
This guy's like, I think he just snorted like a line of cocaine or something like that, because he's like going off.
Can you turn down the volume just a little bit so I don't yell over him?
Yes.
I did not know that.
William F. Buckley, yeah. No, that's public now. That was
Yeah, so I know Jose from way back. Me and him were like some of the first guests on
Tsar Nicholas II,
Jim Bob's show. He's hyper, man.
Being taken out, like,
oh wait, here goes Unseen.
And there's a lot of saints out there that talk about him being the last restrainer, or the restrainer that's mentioned.
He's
in
talking about Tsar Nicholas.
Right?
He's trying to hit him with the
Thessalonians, 2 Thessalonians, right? Yep. And so he's the restrainer, gets taken out, okay, and then it allows all these people to ascend hierarchies that they normally wouldn't. I think that was a big thing. And right around the 1920s, like right after 1917, you have like a cosmic curse going out across the world, like something was unleashed. So but that, you could read about that. I think Bishop Nectari from Real Court wrote an article on that. But I thank you guys for having me, and I appreciate you, DPH. Take it easy.
Of course, brother. Thanks for joining. God bless you.
Yeah, you too, bro. Yeah.
Screwed up throws in $10 as Christos
DPH,
Anesti.
You won us over with the charms. It is what it is.
God bless you. So, Roscoe, you haven't commented on the World War II consensus. And I take it, are you Gen Z? Not that it's a huge deal. I'm just curious for the perspective.
Yeah, I'm 18 years old.
Okay. Okay, there you go. Okay, so from your worldview, like, what are you seeing with this? What's your thoughts on the World War II consensus falling apart?
Well, you know, I think what we're witnessing is the creation of a new sort of mythological
He
narrative.
said, notice how
So
neurotypical.
with Marxism or with Marxist
Well,
ideology in general,
well, neither did Unseen.
they will mythologize all of history and extrapolate that all of history is centered on the progressive struggle against
You said
this sort
what,
of elite
Machine?
class.
Right.
The liberals.
Oh no, just Hank was commenting.
I mean, I'm honestly very happy to go, but I can guarantee you they are not going to like what I have to say more than what you guys say. Like I can guarantee
Well,
you, like I'll
I
make
think
it worse.
I think we hit like some deep points, and we did it very incognito mode. Like the thing I said about Council for National Policy and some of those quotes that Unseen was reading, those were bombs. They just weren't knowing what was happening.
Yeah, they're subtle. They're a lot more subtle. I go kind of more for the jugular, which people don't realize. But yeah, I don't want
Yeah, I
to.
could have
do
gone at
that.
that Pat Buchanan book, but I really didn't.
I know,
Well,
that's
what
what
I
I'm
left
saying,
with
like-
was Tsar Nicholas II being the last monarch getting taken out, and then kind of heretics is ascending up hierarchies after that. So that was a very slight move I pulled there, but I don't know if he caught it.
I'm sure he did. He's not. DPH is very smart. Jose is very, very smart too. Jose is from way back in the day. Me and him were on Jim Bob way back in the day, and I don't even know who that dude is, but he's a very smart dude. But he's very hyper today. I don't know what it is, but they're just. I think that they're doing good analysis, but you guys kind of took it to a more fundamental level, which I know that it definitely, like, DPH does take to heart whatever you're saying. So I do appreciate that about DPH. I just don't want to go in there and like be a wrecking ball to whatever he's trying to do, because at
Well,
least he's given some better analysis than other people.
Well, I've kind of said that DPH and Jay Dyer are less unfuckable than Jim Bob and Andrew because they focus on philosophy. They're not doing this political red pill thing or whatever. Where they're, I mean,
I think they're more good faith. I think they're better faith than both of those two dudes.
well, they know. I think it's because they went to. I mean, what do I really know? But I'd say it's because they went to school.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like that says something because it's like, it's it's not a huge deal because obviously the universities are fake and you have to pay for it. So how real can it be? I mean, you could learn the same thing if you go to a library for sure. But
Well, it's real in the sense that you get taken seriously by other managerial people, but that comes with its own.
well, I think they do more
Lost.
presentations on philosophy, which I find that more. They do less like reaction and like shit talk, and then go with the drama, and then do the gay ops, and go on.
Well, they're a lot more subtle about it. I think that's the thing, is like I can appreciate that. I mean, like Hank down here, Hank thinks that that my power level's low, and maybe he's right, but
What does that mean?
but it's okay.
Well, me and Hank got yeah, I don't know how Hank didn't get struck. And Hank was going at him yesterday. But yeah,
How did we hold up, dude? Honestly, be honest, guys.
yeah, I don't
I
know.
think you were.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think we could have been. Yeah, we were okay, right, Zephyr?
Yeah, it was good, but you got charmed a little bit. It's fine. It's normal. I think you held your ground.
We got chisarmed. That's what I said. Is we got chisarmed. But
Well, I don't know. I wasn't trying to be a straight like, yo, you, blah blah blah.
That's right. That's not how. That's not really my style, anyway. But the thing is that I thought it'd be wise to just invite him. Yeah, on the off chance that he may get drunk one day and decide to come by. I mean, and I think then we could really engage. I think if they came over to our side, we could really engage them and press them on a lot of things. Oh wait, I see a bunch. I see a number of people in the back here. Oh whoops. Oh, these guys.
I love you, Hank.
Yeah, there's definitely like that last topic. I would like to go more into like.
Yeah, they were doing some weird shit. They were doing some pro-Russian stuff. The Jose guy was, and I mean, one of the guys held up a Pat Buchanan book, so we could have totally went on him.
Well,
for that.
didn't it seem like he was kind of supporting Mean Mr. Mustache a little bit by what he said there?
Yeah, they made definitely made some weird points. He definitely didn't understand the agenda by what he was saying, because like I was trying to tell these kids like, look, if you talk about this shit, they want you to talk about it so they could put you on a list. They're looking for, white guys to talk about this shit so they could put you on a list. So it's pretty obvious, to me
Yeah,
that
I was
that's
trying to
some
show
bait
the
shit.
dialectic between the two, that they're of the same spirit. You know what I mean? I think that's really where the argument should go, because that's what we're seeing on social media is like a phenomenon where this thought has like kind of moved into our era. It's weird.
Yeah. Yeah, but I got thrown off of Jim Bob once. I've had a couple arguments with Jim Bob, and then they threw me off for other panels and stuff. And then sometimes I press Jim Bob on questions that he hasn't been able to answer. And one time I had a good conversation with him. So I've had mixed things with him. I've had mixed things with Andrew. Sometimes they get into an argument, they start calling me a liar, they start doing all this crazy shit, and then I prove that they're the ones that are fucking lying. And then they like block me and shit. But
we should roll up that more often, dude.
Yeah, but the DPH guy, he's always had a good conversation with me at least. I mean, right? So
and with me too.
I mean, I had his mods get mad at me in the chat because I was bringing up how
his mods were pissed. Like, 3 or 4 people. I should have scrolled up in the chat. 3 or 4 people said in the chat, "Oh my God, Machine Lies is here. This is horrible." They literally all said that. I was about to zoom into that. Yeah.
I love that.
It was on the side of the screen.
Yes.
Yeah, like like it was on the side of the screen, and then I highlighted it, so it would become blue. So if you guys go back in the video, you can zoom in and see what those comments are saying. Those comments were vicious.
Well, that's what you want. That's what you want people to do. To be afraid when you walk in. I have Alvin Slavia.
I don't.
And all the Keystone Cop crew, saying that every time I appear. So
Slow boy was pissed. Yeah.
I want them to be happy when I come in, but if they can't be happy
We
whenever I
didn't
come
disrupt
in,
anything, dude.
Slow bitch white whore.
Yes, you don't have to disrupt anything. That's the point. You could be on point, and they're still pissed because they're in the cult.
What's wrong with cults, Hank?
Pick your cult very carefully. That's pretty much what's wrong. But choose your cult very carefully. Otherwise, like they said, you'll be trying to make assumptions based on lies, and then you'll end up Upper Creek.
I like how Hamza put it. She said, "I'm a free agent." So am I. I'm a free agent.
Hamza?
If I'm here, it's because I like you.
Wait. Who did you say? Did you say Hamza?
Alexander?
Yeah, so Unseen Warfare, this is insane information. This woman on panel is literally a witch who like infiltrated the Catholic Church, who like exposed their sex scandals. Wild shit.
Wait, who are you talking about?
We're talking about a lady on that's a regular guest on NPC the game. Isn't that a wild information?
She actually pretty cool. She raised my chart the other day.
So we definitely need to look into that if you guys know what I mean.
So she's a witch who infiltrated the Catholic Church
and exposed the sex scandals in the Catholic Church.
As a witch? That's very.
I did not.
Well, now I think now she's a witch or something like that.
Yeah, who else would be flexible enough to do such a thing? I mean, Corelli.
No, I don't think she. I don't think she honeypotted them, Hank. I don't think that's what happened. But yeah.
She's really like lady. Way more than me, even.
Only a witch would be able to be flexible enough with the system to use it to break itself.
I'm not trying to break. I'm trying to open things up.
I thought the Catholics were witches.
They kind of are.
I gotta go to Vespers.
Anti-witches.
Yeah, blessings, bro.
Anti-witches.
Yeah, they are, and that's why And that's why you could
or counter
other
witches.
witches or an actual threat. Normies can't do anything. Witches can hurt other witches.
Oh, all right, guys. It's time to read some.
You guys really
some
should
Nietzsche.
like get the.
Oh wait, what was that, Zeph?
Do it. I said you guys
Wait,
really
what?
should check out the role playing. There's a role playing game that's
Oh, okay.
done by White Wolf that's called Mage, and it pretty much breaks down in a very creepily accurate way, like all of the factions up to a certain point when it was published.
Well, you know who else does that? The Illuminati card
Magician
game.
works.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I know. That's the pick. It picked it up from there, pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah, when I do a video game, I'll probably pick up the same factions from both of those.
I have the source book for the Mage book. I'll take some pictures and I'll put them on the Discord. Show you what I mean.
Thank
It's
you.
pretty interesting stuff.
Yeah, let me know so I can find the rest of it. I'm sailing the high seas.
And if there's anything that you want out of it, I mean, I could make a PDF out of it eventually, but it's got some of my scribblings in the margins, and it's got some coffee stains and stuff. So
Yeah, if you can just give me that proper name for it, so I can do queries for it, that'd be great.
Oh yeah, it's called Mage the Ascension.
All right, that should be good enough. Let me check. Yeah, that's enough. Thank you very much.
Okay.
They even have a wiki.
Oh yeah, they do, and then they have online RPGs, which is kind
Okay,
of like.
friends. Well, would you like to say some closing
Sorry.
statements here? Blessings.
I think that works as my closing statement.
Yeah, thank you so much, Hank. Well, what about you, Zeph?
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to go there, but it's pretty interesting stuff. I just wish that friggin' I've been hearing a lot of people saying that other people are demons. To me, that is like not good.
Who said that to you?
No, just people in general calling each other demons.
Which people? Who?
All over the fucking panelverse. I'm not gonna call anybody out, but I'm just saying that it's out there if you want to find it.
I think it's mainly the sanity machine, but
There's a lot of that too, yes, from there, but there's other people too that are like, they're not even bad people. They're like internet cops. Like they're really trying to be good. I know, and I have to defend
I
them.
think that's a cover up.
I think so too. Sometimes,
Yeah, but it's not just that they're trying to be good. They're trying to deter people from the type of behavior that is actually preferable.
Well, they're not deterring me, and if they're calling me a demon, that's pretty funny.
Well, I think it's just more that I don't think anybody's trying to or not trying to get involved with things they don't like, but I think they're pressurized to. I mean, because it's on their mind, right?
That I like, but that's because that's the only way you can change them. I'm not buying to it, but I'm gonna go there.
Right. Right, but sometimes you can't change people.
No, I never try to. I never try to. I'm not trying to change people. I'm trying to show them.
Right.
And it's up to them if they want to bite or not. But they attack me instead. And that's fine.
I feel you, Zeph. Yeah, I'm feeling attacked as well. You know how it is. We got 9 people watching. We're on the alternative channel. Obviously, attempts have been made to silence. So yeah, people are afraid of what I have to say. But yeah, blessings, Zeph. Thank you for being here with me.
Thank you.
Of course.
Same.
Yeah, blessings. And moving to Nietzsche here. And then Julius Evola. So he was talking about dialectical thinking and that basically it seeks to go beyond all differences, and he thinks that that's not a good way, right, to go about. He says that untruth has to be recognized. It's not about overcoming all disagreement and getting to some underlying truth, right? And he's talking about the dialectical systems, right? How the dialectical systems seek to go beyond opposition. And he think that's he thinks that's basically a flawed way of thinking, right? And he's saying that that they really seek vulnerability. They seek timidity, right? So he's kind of inscribing the characters of basically Hegel, Kant, right? And he's looking at the philosophers, right? Okay, and he's saying that Epicurus is sort of way better than Plato because he accepts fundamental truths, right? He doesn't try to go beyond nature, right? So that's kind of where he's at in this introduction. Okay, and he's sort of rejecting Stoicism. He's rejecting dialectical thinking. He's rejecting Platonism. He's rejecting the rejection of nature and the body and all those types of things. Right, and he's saying that the body is fundamental truth. Right, it's not about the mind in this ethereal realm. Right. So he goes on to say, he says, it seems to me that there's everywhere an attempt at present to divert attention from the actual influence which Kant exercised on German philosophy, and especially to ignore prudently the value which he set upon himself. Kant was the first and foremost proud of his table of categories, which it in his hand. Okay, with it in his hand, he said, this is the most difficult thing that could ever be undertaken on behalf of metaphysics. Okay, Hegel said that too, right? He said that the mind realizing its own movement towards truth and reality folding in on itself through the dialectic was actually achieved by himself. Right? So their megalomaniacal systematizing led them to construct what they felt was a complete system of knowledge. Right? Or in other words, a philosophical system. Okay, and I think Nietzsche thinks this is the fundamental error, right? You need to use philosophy as a tool. And not as some sort of endpoint. Okay, that's based on some sort of preconceived notion. So he goes on to say that the table of categories, right, that basically systematize existence, right? It's a fundamental flaw, right? A, because it seeks to categorize all of reality, and B, because it separates itself from the body and from nature, right? Okay, but he goes on to say, he says, I forgot, I'm not supposed to be explaining this and cheating. I'm cheating. I'm not supposed to be explaining this. Blessings, Zephyr. But yeah, I'm supposed to just read this. Sorry. This is the most difficult thing that could be undertaken on behalf of metaphysics. Let us understand this could be, quote unquote, he was proud of having discovered a new faculty in man, a faculty of synthetic judgment a priori, granting that he deceived himself in this matter. The development and rapid flourishing of German philosophy depended nevertheless on his pride and on the eagerly rivalry of younger generation to discover, if possible, something at all events, quote, new faculties, unquote. of which to be still prouder. But let us reflect for a moment. It is high time to do so. How are synthetic judgments a priori possible? Kant asked himself, and what is really his answer? By means of a means, faculty, in parentheses. But unfortunately, not in 5 words, but so circumstantially, imposingly, and with such display of German profundity and verbal flourishes that one altogether loses sight of the comical naserie allemande. Naserie allemande? Let me look that up. Naserie allemande. Yeah, I can't. Looks like there's not like good translations of it. I wonder where Nietzsche found this terminology, huh? Anyways, if anybody can look it up, let me know. And okay, so people were beside themselves with delight over this new faculty, and jubilation reached its climax when Kant further discovered a moral faculty in man. For at that time, the honeymoon of German philosophy, all the young theologians of the Tübingen institution went immediately into the groves, all seeking for quote unquote faculties. And what did they find? And what did they not find? In that innocent, rich, and still youthful period of the German spirit to which Romanticism, the malicious fairy, piped and sang, when one could not yet distinguish between finding and inventing. Above all, a faculty for the transcendental, quote unquote. Schelling christened it intellectual intuition, and thereby gratified the most earnest longings and the natural pious inclined Germans. Yeah, Schelling basically came up with this notion of like the unconscious and the ground of being and all this stuff. Okay. Schelling and Hegel were like huge friends, right? One can do no greater wrong to the whole of this exuberant and eccentric movement, which was really youthfulness, notwithstanding that it disguised itself so boldly in hoary and senile conceptions, than to take it seriously, or even treat it with moral indignation. Enough, however, the world grew older and the dream vanished. A time when people rubbed their foreheads, and they still rub them today. People had been dreaming. People had been dreaming. And first and foremost, old Kant, by means of a means or faculty, he had said, or means to say, but is that an answer, an explanation, or is it not rather merely a repetition of the question? How does opium induce sleep? By means of means, faculty, namely the virus dormitiva, replies the doctor in Moliere. But such replies belong to the realm of comedy.
And it is high time to replace the Kantian question, how are synthetic judgments a priori possible? But another question, why is belief in such judgments necessary? In effect, it is high time that we should understand that such judgments must be believed to be true. For the sake of the preservation of creatures like ourselves, though they still might naturally be false judgments, or more plainly spoken, and roughly and readily, synthetic judgments a priori should not, quote unquote, be possible at all. We have no right to them. In our mouths, they are nothing but false judgments. Only, of course, the belief that the truth is necessary, as plausible belief and ocular evidence belonging to the perspective view of life. And finally, to call to mind the enormous influence which, quote unquote, German philosophy, I hope you understand its right to inverted commas, goose feet, has exercised throughout the whole of Europe. There is no doubt that a certain virtus normativa had a share in it. Let me look that up. Virtus normativa. Virtus normativa. What this be? Virtus normativa. Meaning an origin of the phrase virtus normativa. Dormative? What is dormative? Dormative means virtue of the dormative. Dormative is what? Inducing sleep by virtue. So by virtue of inducing sleep, virtus dormativa. So he says German philosophy lulled all of Europe like an opiate, is what he's trying to say, okay? Thanks to German philosophy, was a delight to the noble idlers, the virtuous, the mystic, the artiste, the three-fourths Christians, and the political obscurantists of all nations, to find an antidote to the still overwhelming sensualism which overflowed from the last century into this, in short. Sensus a super. Sensus a super. The senses sleep. Nietzsche quotes the Latin ca est in eo virtus dormativa, cujus est natura sensus a super. The senses sleep. As regards to materialistic atomism, It is one of the best refuted theories that have been advanced, and in Europe there is now perhaps no one in the learned world so unscholarly as to attach serious signification to it, except for convenient everyday use as an abbreviation of the means of expression, thanks chiefly to Paul Boscovich. He and the Pole Copernicus have hitherto been the greatest and most successful opponents of ocular evidence. For while Copernicus has persuaded us to believe, contrary to all the senses, that Earth does not stand fast, Boscovich has taught us to abjure the belief in the last thing that stood fast of the Earth, that belief in substance, quote unquote, and in quote unquote matter, in the Earth residuum and particle atom. It is the greatest triumph over the senses that has hitherto been gained on Earth. One must, however, go still further and also declare war, relentless war to the knife against the atomistic requirements, which still lead a dangerous afterlife in places where no one suspects them, like the more celebrated metaphysical requirements, quote unquote. One must also, above all, give the finishing stroke to that other and more portentous atomism which Christianity has taught best and longest, the soul atomism. Let it be permitted to designate by the expression the belief which regards the soul as something indestructible, eternal, indivisible, as a monad, as an atomon. This belief ought to be expelled from science. Between ourselves, it is not at all necessary to get rid of, quote unquote, the soul thereby, and thus renounce one of the oldest and most venerated hypotheses, as happens frequently to the clumsiness of naturalists, who can hardly touch on the soul without immediately losing it. But the way is open for a new for new expectations. I mean acceptations. And refinements. Yeah, blessings. Okay, refinements of the soul hypothesis. And such conceptions as mortal soul and soul of subjective multiplicity and soul as a structure of instincts and passions want henceforth to have legitimate rights in science. In that, the new psychologist is about to put an end to the superstitions which have hitherto flourished with almost tropical luxuriance around the idea of the soul. He is really, as it were, thrusting himself into a new desert and a new distrust. It is possible that the older psychologists had a merrier and more comfortable time of it. Eventually, however, he finds that precisely thereby he is also condemned to invent, and who knows, perhaps to discover the new. Discover the new. Psychologists should bethink themselves before putting down the instinct of self-preservation as a cardinal instinct of an organic being. A living thing seeks above all to discharge its strength. Life itself is will to power. Self-preservation is only one of the indirect and most frequent results thereof. In short, here as everywhere else, let us beware of the superfluous teleological principles, one of which is the instinct of self-preservation. We owe it to Spinoza's inconsistency. It is thus in effect that method ordains, which must be essential economy of principles. It is perhaps just dawning on 5 or 6 minds that natural philosophy is only a world exposition and world arrangement, according to us, if I may say so, and not a world explanation. But insofar as it is based on a belief in the senses, regarded as more for a long time to come, must be regarded as more, namely as an explanation. It has eyes, fingers of its own. It has ocular evidence and palpableness of its own. This operates fascinatingly persuasively and convincingly upon an age with fundamentally plebeian tastes. In fact, it follows instinctively the canon of truth of eternal popular sensualism. That is clear what is explained, quote unquote, only that which can be seen and felt. One must pursue every problem thus far adversely. However, the charm of the Platonic mode of thought, which was an aristocratic mode, consisted precisely in resistance to obvious sense evidence. Perhaps among men who enjoyed even stronger and more fastidious senses than our contemporaries, but who knew how to find higher triumph in remaining masters of them, and this by means of pale, cold, gray conceptual networks, which they threw over the motley whirl of the senses. The mob of the senses, as Plato said. And this overcoming of the world and interpreting of the world in the manner of Plato, there was an enjoyment different from that which the physicists of today offer us, and likewise the Darwinists and anti-teleologists. Among the physiological workers, with their principle of, quote, smallest possible effort, unquote, and greatest possible blunder, quote, where there's nothing more to see or to grasp, there's nothing more for men to do, unquote. That is certainly an interpretive, an imperative, different from the Platonic one. But it may notwithstanding be the right imperative for a hardy, laborious race of machinists and bridge builders of the future who have nothing but rough work to perform. That's great. Okay, this next paragraph is kind of a doozy. It's like 4 or 5 pages, or wait. Huh. Yeah, actually, there's a couple of short paragraphs. There's a lot of Latin in here. I think I'll start playing Evola at this point. Thank you guys for being here. You know, and of course, we never got to the James Lindsay interview at all. You know, guess we'll have to look at that next time, right? But let me look at this Ride the Tiger by Evola. Bring that up. Blessings to Annapurna. Thank you for being here. Let me open this up, and this is how we're going to end the show. Oh, yeah, by the way, there's this episode here that we procured here, right? Our last episode of the Machine Lives is actually now available, right? So new episode of The Machine Lies. Right here. Okay, so go ahead and check that out there.
New episode of The Machine Lies available on the main channel. Okay, go look up The Machine Lies. On YouTube. We may be pretty much shadow banned out here at this stage of the conversation. So let me drop the link for The Machine Lies here before I play some Evola, right? Okay, and we don't know how long we'll have at that channel, The Machine Lies, right? But we have all the material that we've recorded there, right? So it's not a problem. Okay, we'll just eventually come back there, right? So anyways, let me look up this Ride the Tiger by Evola, and I'll let you guys go. You know? But yeah, we will be back at some time later in the week with the Zionism, with more Zionism stuff, right? So we'll go ahead and show you guys that later. Let me go back a little bit, and we'll go to this. And yeah, thank you guys so much. Blessings. And of course, we're being heavily censored. It would be a good idea to spread the material around or to show some support if you like the show, right? Because basically, you know, other than reposting and, you know, spreading this material around, I don't actually know how we're supposed to grow on these channels, right? So maybe, you know, people that are watching this, right, if you like this material, right, go and tell other people that may be interested in this material, right, to watch it, watch some of our breakdowns. Obviously, we cover a range of content in terms of books. We have talks, we have public talks, right, debates, right? Okay, we look at popular culture, we look at, okay, we have music, right? So anything that you think that people would like, right? Please go ahead and spread around, because they are definitely trying to suppress this content and these transmissions that I'm offering to the people, right? We're definitely over the target in you know, certain materials here. So yeah, blessings to all the people. And there's more than one group here that seems to have a problem with what we're covering or what we're talking about here. So yeah, blessings.
Superior preformal state, anterior to the particular historical formulations. A state that in the past had no pertinence to the masses, but had the character of an esoteric doctrine. For the rest, given the impossibility of acting positively in the sense of a real and general return to the normal system, and given the impossibility, within the climate of modern society, culture, and customs, of molding one's whole existence in an organic and unitary manner, it remains to be seen on what terms one can accept situations of utter dissolution without being inwardly touched by them. What in the current phase, which is in the last analysis a transitional one, can be chosen, separated from the rest, and accepted as a free form of behavior that is not outwardly anachronistic? Can one thus measure oneself against what is most advanced in contemporary thought and lifestyle, while remaining inwardly determined and governed by a completely different spirit? The advice, "Don't go to the place of defense, but to the place of attack," might be adopted by the group of differentiated men, late children of the tradition, who are in question here. That is to say, it might be better to contribute to the fall of that which is already wavering and belongs to yesterday's world than to try to prop it up and prolong its existence artificially. It is a possible tactic, and useful to prevent the final crisis from being the work of the opposition, whose initiative one would then have to suffer. The risks of such a course of action are more than obvious. There is no saying who will have the last word. But in the present epoch, there is nothing that is not risky. This is perhaps the one advantage that it offers to those who are still on their feet. The basic ideas to be drawn from what has been said so far can be summarized as follows. The significance of the crises and the dissolutions that so many people deplore today should be stated, indicating the real and direct object of the destructive processes, bourgeois civilization and society. But measured against traditional values, these latter were already the first negation of a world anterior and superior to them. Consequently, the crisis of the modern world could represent in Hegel's terms a negation of a negation, so as to signify a phenomenon that in its own way is positive. This double negation might end in nothingness, in the nothingness that erupts in multiple forms of chaos, dispersion, rebellion, and protest that characterize many tendencies of recent generations, or in that other nothingness that is scarcely hidden behind the organized system of material civilization. Alternatively, for the men in question here, it might create a new free space that could eventually become the premise for a future formative action. Chapter 2, The End of a Cycle, Ride the Tiger. The idea just mentioned refers to a perspective that does not really enter into the argument of this book, because it is not concerned with inner personal behavior, but with outer circumstances, not with present-day reality, but with an unpredictable future upon which one's own conduct should in no wise depend. This is a perspective already alluded to, which sees that the present time may, in the last analysis, be a transitional epoch. I will say only a little about it before approaching our principal problem. The reference point here is given by the traditional doctrine of cycles and by the idea that the present epoch, with all its typical phenomena, corresponds to the terminal phase of a cycle. The phrase chosen as the title of this book, Ride the Tiger, may serve as a transition between what has been said hitherto and this other order of ideas. The phrase is a Far Eastern saying expressing the idea that if one succeeds in riding a tiger, not only does one avoid having it leap on one, but if one can keep one's seat and not fall off, one may eventually get the better of it. Those who are interested may be reminded of a similar theme found in the schools of traditional wisdom, such as the ox-herding episodes of Japanese Zen. While in classical antiquity there is a parallel in the trials of Mithras, who lets himself be dragged by the bull and will not let go until the animal stops, whereupon Mithras kills it. This symbolism is applicable at various levels. First, it can refer to a line of conduct in the interior, personal life. Then to the appropriate attitude in the face of critical, historical, and collective situations. In the latter case, we are interested in the relation of the symbol to the doctrine of cycles, with regard to both the general structure of history and the particular aspect of it that refers to the sequence of the 4 ages. This is a teaching that, as I have shown elsewhere, bears identical traits in the East and in the ancient West. Giambattista Vico simply caught an echo of it. In the classical world, it was presented in terms of humanity's progressive descent from the Golden Age to what Hesiod called the Iron Age. In the corresponding Hindu teaching, the final age is called the Kali Yuga, the Dark Age. Its essential quality is emphatically said to be a climate of dissolution, in which all the forces, individual and collective, material, psychic, and spiritual, that were previously held in check by a higher law and by influences of a superior order, pass into a state of freedom and chaos. The texts of Tantra have a striking image for this situation, saying that it is the time when Kali is wide awake. Kali is a female divinity symbolizing the elementary, primordial forces of the world and of life. But in her lower aspects, she is also presented as a goddess of sex and orgiastic rites. In previous ages, she was sleeping, that is latent in the latter aspect. But in the Dark Age, she is said to be completely awake and active. Everything points to the fact that exactly this situation has been reached in recent times, having for its epicenter the civilization and society of the West, from which it has rapidly spread over the whole planet. It is not too forced an interpretation to link this with the fact that the present epoch stands under the zodiacal sign of Aquarius, the waters in which everything turns to a fluid and formless state. Thus, predictions made many centuries ago, for these ideas go back that far, appear strangely timely today. One finds here an analogy to what I have said above regarding the problem of what attitude is proper to the final age, associated here with riding the tiger. In fact, the texts that discuss the Kali Yuga and the age of Kali also declare that the norms of life, valid during epochs in which divine forces were more or less alive and active, must be considered as cancelled in the final age. During the latter, there lives an essentially different human type, who is incapable of following the ancient precepts. Not only that, but because of the different historical and even planetary circumstances, such precepts, even if followed, would not yield the same results. For this reason, different norms apply, and the rule of secrecy is lifted from certain truths, a certain ethic, and particular rights, to which the rule previously applied on account of their dangerous character, and because they contravened the forms of a normal existence, regulated by the sacred tradition. No one can fail to see the significance of this convergence of views. In this, as in other points, my ideas, far from having a personal and contingent character, are essentially linked to perspectives already known to the world of tradition, when abnormal situations in general were foreseen and analyzed. We shall now examine the principle of riding the tiger, as applied to the external world and the total environment. Its significance can be stated as follows. When a cycle of civilization is reaching its end, it is difficult to achieve anything by resisting it and by directly opposing the forces in motion. The current is too strong. One would be overwhelmed. The essential thing is not to let oneself be impressed by the omnipotence and apparent triumph of the forces of the epoch. These forces, devoid of connection with any higher principle, are in fact on a short chain. One should not become fixated on the present and on things at hand, but keep in view the conditions that may come about in the future. Thus, the principle to follow could be that of letting the forces and processes of this epoch take their own course, while keeping oneself firm and ready to intervene when the tiger, which cannot leap on the person riding it, is tired of running. The Christian injunction, resist not evil, may have a similar meaning if taken in a very particular way. One abandons direct action and retreats to a more internal position. The perspective offered by the doctrine of cyclical laws is implicit here. When one cycle closes, another begins, and the point at which a given process reaches its extreme is also the point at which it turns in the opposite direction. But there is still the problem of continuity between the two cycles. To use an image from Hofmannsthal, the positive solution would be that of a meeting between those who have been able to stay awake through the long night, and those who may appear the next morning. But one cannot be sure of this happening. It is impossible to foresee with certainty how and on what plane there can be any continuity between the cycle that is nearing its end and the next one. Therefore, the line of conduct to be followed in the present epoch must have an autonomous character and an imminent individual value. I mean to say that the attraction of positive prospects, more or less short-term, should not play an important part in it. They might be entirely lacking right up to the end of the cycle, and the possibilities offered by a new movement beyond the 0 point might concern others coming after us, who may have held equally firm without awaiting any direct results or exterior changes. Before leaving this topic and resuming my principal argument, it may be useful to mention another point connected to cyclical laws. This concerns the relationship between Western civilization and other civilizations, especially those of the East. Among those who have recognized the crisis of the modern world and who have also abandoned the idea that modern civilization is the civilization par excellence, the zenith and measure of all others, some have turned their eyes to the East. They see there, to a certain degree, a traditional and spiritual orientation to life that has long ceased to exist in the West as the basis for the effective organization of the various realms of existence. They have even wondered whether the East might furnish useful reference points for a revival and reintegration of the West. It is important to have a clear view of the domain to which such a proposition might apply. If it is simply a matter of doctrines and intellectual contacts, the attempt is legitimate. But one should take note that valid examples and points of reference are to be found, at least partially, in our own traditional past, without having to turn to non-European civilizations. Not much is to be gained by any of this, however. It would be a matter of conversations at a high level between isolated individuals, cultivators of metaphysical systems. If one is more concerned with real influences that have a powerful effect on existence, one should have no illusions about them. The East itself is now following in our footsteps, ever more subject to the ideas and influences that have led us to the point at which we find ourselves, modernizing itself and adopting our own secular and materialistic forms of life. What is still left of Eastern traditions and character is steadily losing ground and becoming marginalized. The liquidation of colonialism and the material independence that Eastern peoples are acquiring vis-à-vis Europe are closely accompanied by an ever more blatant subjection to the ideas, the mores, and the advanced and progressive mentality of the West. Based on the doctrine of cycles, it may be that anything of value from the point of view of a man of tradition, either in the East or elsewhere, concerns a residual legacy that survives up to a point, not because it belongs to areas that are truly untouched by the principle of decline, but merely because this process is still in an early phase there. For such civilizations, it is only a matter of time before they find themselves at the same point as ourselves, knowing the same problems and the same phenomena of dissolution under the sign of progress and modernity. The tempo may even be much faster in the East. We have the example of China, which in 2 decades has traveled the whole way from an imperial traditional civilization to a materialistic and atheist communist regime, a journey that the Europeans took centuries to accomplish. Outside the circles of scholars and specialists in metaphysical disciplines, the myth of the East is therefore a fallacy. The desert encroaches. There is no other civilization that can serve as support. We have to face our problems alone. The only prospect offered us as a counterpart of the cyclical laws, and that only hypothetical, is that the process of decline of the Dark Age has first reached its terminal phases with us in the West. Therefore, it is not impossible that we would also be the first to pass the 0 point, in a period in which the other civilizations, entering later into the same current, would find themselves more or less in our current state, having abandoned, superseded, what they still offer today in the way of superior values and traditional forms of existence that attract us. The consequence would be a reversal of roles. The West, having reached the point beyond the negative limit, would be qualified to assume a new function of guidance or command, very different from the material, techno-industrial leadership that it wielded in the past, which, once it collapsed, resulted only in a general leveling. This rapid overview of general prospects and problems may have been useful to some readers, but I shall not dwell further on these matters. As I have said, what interests us here is the field of personal life, and from that point of view, in defining the attitude to be taken towards certain experiences and processes of today, having consequences different from what they appear to have for practically all our contemporaries, we need to establish autonomous positions, independent of anything the future may or may not bring.
Yo. Yeah, y'all. Yeah, y'all. Red dog, Ebonese, half yachty and Lebanese. You see me posted, live the life and tape of text, poverty project, son. And I ain't scared to talk. Newborn, 5% of New York. Spray darts where you walk, cocoa head pairs, throw a shall and spin, floating through the village, trapped to design and shine and pillage, torn between the thug and the con. As for the father we born, captive in the mind blind and captive, warfare be interactive, bands of sabotage your substitute, smoke the hydro root and the casual suit. I'm trying to walk these dogs, but I'm a dog myself, get my wealth for death, hard rock cruises so low, stagnating thoughts of paying dues, tired of rocking holes in my shoes, barefoot style is shouting now, set Valentine in the cooler, get the cream doula, figures of dollars, skunk make a dog holler, swarming the bees, so rockin' wallers, popo looking for collars, beat the whole thing, make it happen, challenge, dark clapping, prepare for the swarm, we assassin, but nah, I'ma chill for a minute, smoke bones are hydronetic and get pathetic, sources are similar to Voltron when we swarm, rock my pancake like Spawn, Shaolin breathing in a hailstorm, features of a law notes, investment quotes and topics, Shaolin trees from tropics, representing Shaolin, we gon' die for this, so don't you never feel like you so miss, temple doors open into death wish, peeping analysts, bands who got my new shit,
Village, ocean-wide, dawn on the outside, Sinai, killer beehive, homicide, his side is gone, it's on, my uniform is Uno, occupation.
propeller was take two. Respect due, no commercial. I teach those, I reach those higher heights. Mics of death, words of wisdom, words of an architect strike. Hype is the crowd, down low is me. Bam, sugar free, check, we radical dub. Nightclub, punish the club, attack, hate, running with love. Better grub, dick them down, easy pass sound, pass out, pass it around. Warp in the tunnel, tracks against Woo rap debut. Top articles, spin it again. Sign of the time rhyme, top of the line, bottom of the pen man, stressed in the alphabet, wet, dust mo wet, poet red, evil cassette wreck shows, rip any set, direct approach, coach to MC, toast to MC, don't provoke me, toast to me, WTC, fade is still bushy, spot the best pussy, keep my gear splashing, ready for the action, fade rap attraction, mic that rock the cradle, razor sharp label, ferry boat, Park Hill, Galloway and Sable, Martin Luther King, Islam, Rock the King, 2 to 4 work police, time in the bang, big guns, lawyers, dirty cops, naked in the box, Puerto Ricans, Africans, one ox, bowl of rice, Trump, poor people, plus weed that tastes lethal, we all not treated equal, the Bible, the 36 tribal, trials and tribulations, survival, drugs, asthma, retardation, masturbation, false identification, one nation, blood, mud, water, togetherness, terrorists, peace to all thug, Hennessy in the jug, box cutter under the rug, that'll cut your whole mug, you bug, kid, fuck off.
good shit, Carnival, Knievel. Flip money, DMX bikes, don't slide. Moving in the air, you dummy. Your dumps get lumped like bumps, pop crews like the youngsters who back out rapping. Fans deader than the monsters. It's a shame how your brain get picked to be amongst the best. Copping trees to put a hole in your chest. I'm a slave to the way you get stuck on a vortex. Catch wreck like rotten.com and intellectual fish. Looking to get wet, I bet you ruthless. Catch you falling, you break like the car don't start. Niggas stalling. I'm brawling like that fight night. I'm 21 a champion in my prime like Mike. Fuck up everything in sight. Y'all bite like Mike in his old days. You so afraid, go run away. This nigga don't play. My hip hop rap with a dog strap. Change rattle at the thought of a battle. For the art or the sport, y'all niggas run herd like a cattle. It's full court music. Confuse the second rate drunks, pimps, and the niggas who be users.
Rappers get caught with they shit all day. You acting hard, come on, that be off your hand. I bust every friend like, yo, who gives a fuck if he rapping? We all call to the battle to see what's rappers get caught with they shit all day. You acting hard, come on, that be off your hand. I bust every friend like, yo, who gives a fuck if he rapping? We all come to the battle to really see what's happening.
Rap River Phoenix, seem to really need it. Every night could be another Viper room repeated. People have dreamed and seen it. Feel it, I'm thinking maybe this is the real world and everybody else is crazy. Couldn't have had the baby. Love it and keep the habit. $50 back alley, I said snatch it. Out of the womb, pursuing my doom is looming. I'm moving, enjoying the movement by usually doing everything I probably shouldn't. Robbery couldn't get him any richer than this. I'm part of a movement. Gold mine, rhyme, musically sick. Doing the shit, anything to prove to you how rude I can spit. Live and die for the same hobby. My spirit and body deciding that odds and ain't probably godly enough. Abuse this temple, know all of his followers fucked. Swallowing pure nothing, but sure something can happen. Putting on rapping, double or nothing.
Rappers get caught with they shit all day. You acting hard, come on, that be off your hand. I bust every friend like, yo, who gives a fuck if he rapping? We all call to the battle to see what's rappers get caught with they shit all day. You acting hard, come on, that be off your hand. I bust every friend like, yo, who gives a fuck if he rapping? We all come to the battle to really see what's happening.
viruses which were once stopped by the front door have found their way into the home through personal computers.